You have been carrying a quiet wound for too long, the wound that whispers, "You are not enough." Not healed enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough, not loved enough, not strong enough, not far enough in life. And because of that voice, you keep trying to become someone better before you allow yourself to feel peace. But if becoming better was the answer, why do you still feel empty after every achievement? Why does praise calm you for only a moment before the fear returns? Why does one mistake, one rejection, or one comparison make you feel like you are back at the beginning again? The truth is, the part of you that thinks it is not enough is not your real self. It is a wounded part of your mind that learned to measure your worth through pain, rejection, silence, the way people treated you, and the moments you felt unseen, unwanted, or replaceable. Buddhist wisdom teaches that healing does not begin by fighting this part of you. It begins by seeing it clearly, sitting with it gently, and understanding that the voice saying you are not enough is only a thought, not a truth, only a memory, not your identity, only a passing cloud, not the sky of who you are. Tonight, as you listen to these Buddhist lessons on self-worth, something inside you will begin to soften. You will stop running after approval like a thirsty person chasing rain. You will stop begging the world to prove that you matter. You will stop treating your life like a test you must pass before you deserve kindness. And slowly, you will learn how to return to yourself without shame, without hatred, and without the heavy need to prove your existence. This is not just another lesson about confidence. This is a healing journey for the hidden part of you that has been tired of pretending, tired of comparing, tired of overgiving, tired of apologizing for being human, and tired of believing that love must be earned through perfection. Are you ready? Let us begin. And before we go deeper, pause for a moment and notice something very important. The voice that says, "I am not enough," rarely sounds like an enemy at first. Most of the time it sounds like ambition, it sounds like discipline, it sounds like, "I just need to improve." It sounds like, "I will rest when I become better." But hidden inside that voice is often a wound that has been pretending to be wisdom. There is a kind of pain that does not shout. It does not always look like sadness. It does not always look like failure. Sometimes it looks like a person who is always trying harder, always fixing something, always learning another lesson, always setting another goal, always chasing another version of themselves. From the outside, people may call this person focused, strong, serious, mature, inspiring. They may say, "Look at how much you are growing." But inside, that same person may be running from a quiet fear. If I stop improving, people will finally see that I am not enough. This is one of the most hidden wounds in the human heart. It hides behind productivity. It hides behind good habits. It hides behind books, routines, goals, gym sessions, prayers, meditation, career plans, beauty changes, personality changes, and the endless hunger to become someone more acceptable. And because society praises improvement, many people never notice when their growth has stopped coming from love and started coming from shame. Self-improvement can be beautiful. There is nothing wrong with wanting to learn, heal, become wiser, become kinder, become stronger, or live with more discipline. Buddhism does not teach laziness. It does not say, "Stay the same forever." It teaches awareness, right effort, compassion, and the courage to wake up from suffering. But the question is not whether you are improving. The deeper question is, what is the energy behind your improvement? Are you growing because you respect your life, or are you growing because you secretly hate who you are right now? That difference changes everything. When growth comes from love, it feels steady. It may still be difficult, but it does not feel like war. You can make mistakes and still breathe. You can move slowly and still feel worthy. You can have bad days and still belong to yourself. But when growth comes from self-rejection, it feels like punishment dressed as progress. You are not caring for yourself. You are chasing a version of yourself that you believe will finally deserve peace. You are not building a life. You are trying to escape the shame of being seen as ordinary, flawed, unfinished, or human. And this is where many people get trapped. They think they are healing, but they are actually becoming more skilled at rejecting themselves. They think they are becoming better, but they are only moving the finish line of self-acceptance farther away. Today they say, "I will feel enough when I lose weight." Tomorrow it becomes, "I will feel enough when I earn more money." After that it becomes, "I will feel enough when I become calmer, more spiritual, more attractive, more successful, more respected, more loved." But every time they reach one point, the mind invents another reason they are still not enough. This is the hungry mind. Buddhism speaks deeply about craving, and craving is not only about wanting pleasure, money, food, praise, or comfort. Craving can also hide inside the desire to become a perfect self. You crave a future version of you because you cannot sit peacefully with the present one. You believe peace is waiting at the end of transformation, but the Buddha's teaching points in a different direction. Peace does not come when you finally become flawless. Peace begins when you stop using your flaws as evidence that you are unworthy. There is a quiet violence in constantly telling yourself, "I should be better by now." It sounds harmless, but listen closely. "I should be over this by now. I should be stronger by now. I should be more successful by now. I should be healed by now. I should not still struggle with this." Every sentence becomes a small stone thrown at your own heart. And because you are the one throwing it, you may not call it cruelty. You may call it honesty. You may call it motivation. You may call it being realistic. But the body knows the difference. The heart knows when it is being trained through fear. Many people were not taught to grow gently. They were taught to grow through pressure. Maybe love came with conditions. Maybe approval came only when you performed well. Maybe you were noticed only when you were useful, quiet, excellent, beautiful, obedient, successful, or easy to handle. Maybe mistakes were not treated as lessons, but as proof that something was wrong with you. So over time, your mind learned a painful rule. I must keep becoming better so I do not lose love. That rule can follow a person into adulthood like a shadow. This is why you may feel guilty when you rest. This is why doing nothing can feel dangerous. This is why peace may feel unfamiliar. This is why you may struggle to enjoy what you already have, because your mind is always scanning for what is missing. You may achieve something meaningful, but instead of feeling full, your mind whispers, "Good, now what next?" You may receive praise, but instead of letting it touch you, your mind says, "They do not know the real me." You may change, grow, mature, and become better in many ways, but still feel like you are standing outside the door of your own worth, waiting for permission to enter. Buddhist wisdom asks you to look at this pattern with honesty, but not with hatred. It does not ask you to attack your desire to improve. It asks you to see whether your desire to improve has become another form of suffering, because anything done without awareness can become a chain, even good things. Meditation can become a chain if you use it to prove you are spiritual. Kindness can become a chain if you use it to earn love. Discipline can become a chain if you use it to punish the parts of you that are tired. Even healing can become a chain if you believe you must become completely healed before you are allowed to love yourself. The mind is clever. It can turn anything into a measuring stick. It can turn growth into competition. It can turn spirituality into pride. It can turn self-care into another task you fail at. You miss one routine, and suddenly you feel like you are falling behind. You react emotionally once, and suddenly you think all your progress is gone. You compare your healing to someone else's calm, and suddenly your journey feels too slow. But healing is not a race, and the soul does not open under threat. The Buddha taught the middle way, and this lesson is powerful here. The middle way is not about giving up effort. It is not about becoming careless. It is about stepping away from extremes. One extreme says, "I do not need to change at all." The other extreme says, "I must hate myself into becoming better." Both create suffering. The middle way says, "I can grow without despising myself. I can be honest without being cruel. I can improve without treating my present self like a mistake." This is the kind of growth many people have never experienced. Growth without inner violence, discipline without shame, healing without self-hatred, effort without the belief that your current self is worthless. And when you first hear this, part of your mind may resist it. It may say, "But if I accept myself as I am, I will stop growing." That is one of the biggest lies shame has ever told. Acceptance does not mean you stop growing. Acceptance means you stop wasting energy fighting your own existence. Think of a garden. A good gardener does not scream at the soil for not yet becoming flowers. A good gardener does not insult the seed for still being underground. A good gardener gives water, light, patience, and protection. Growth happens not because the seed is hated, but because it is cared for. In the same way, your life does not become better because you attack yourself every morning. It becomes better when you create the conditions for wisdom, courage, patience, and right action to grow. But many people treat themselves like broken machines, not living beings. They say, "Fix this, improve that, remove this weakness, become more useful, become more impressive." They do not ask, "What pain is underneath this pattern?" They do not ask, "What does this part of me need?" They do not ask, "Can I meet myself with kindness while I grow?" And because they never ask, they spend years polishing the outside while the wounded part inside remains unseen. The hidden wound of always trying to be better is often the wound of never feeling accepted as you are. It is the wound of believing love lives in the future. It is the wound of thinking, "One day when I become enough, I will stop being afraid." But Buddhism gently shows that one day is often a trap. The mind keeps promising peace later, so it doesn't have to practice peace now. Later, when you are richer. Later, when you are healed. Later, when you are admired. Later, when your body changes. Later, when your past no longer hurts. Later, when everyone understands you. But life is not happening later. Your breath is happening now. Your heart is beating now. Your chance to meet yourself with mercy is now. This does not mean your pain disappears in one moment. It means you stop adding a second wound on top of the first. In Buddhism, there is a teaching often explained through the image of two arrows. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is the suffering we add through resistance, judgment, and mental stories. Maybe the first arrow is a mistake you made. The second arrow is, "I always ruin everything." Maybe the first arrow is rejection. The second arrow is, "This proves I am unlovable." Maybe the first arrow is slow progress. The second arrow is, "I am behind in life." The first arrow may hurt, but the second arrow is often the one that keeps the wound open. When you are always trying to be better from a place of shame, you are living inside the second arrow. You are not only dealing with life, you are judging yourself for how you deal with life. You are not only healing, you are criticizing yourself for not healing faster. You are not only growing, you are measuring your growth against an imaginary version of who you think you should be. This is exhausting, not because you are weak, but because no human heart was designed to be under trial every day. The strange thing is that people who feel not enough are often not lazy people. Many of them are deeply thoughtful, sensitive, hard-working, and caring. They notice their flaws. They reflect. They want to do better. They take responsibility. But because they are so aware of their imperfections, they sometimes forget their goodness. They become experts in what is wrong with them and beginners in seeing what is still beautiful. They can name every weakness, every failure, every awkward moment, every regret, every way they could improve. But when asked what is good in them, they pause, as if kindness toward themselves is a language they never learned. This is why Buddhist practice begins with seeing clearly. Not seeing harshly, not seeing dramatically, not seeing through the eyes of shame, but seeing clearly. Clear seeing means you can say, "Yes, I have patterns that need healing," without adding, "so I am worthless." You can say, "Yes, I made a mistake," without adding, "so I am a failure." You can say, "Yes, I still feel insecure sometimes," without adding, "so I have made no progress." Clear seeing separates the action from the identity, the wound from the person, the thought from the truth. When you begin to see this way, something softens. You no longer need to pretend you are perfect, because your worth is not built on pretending. You no longer need to hide every weakness, because weakness is not the opposite of worth. You no longer need to become impressive before you become kind to yourself. You can meet yourself in the middle of the unfinished place and say, "I am still here. I am still learning. I do not need to abandon myself to become better." This is a very deep form of self-worth. It is not loud confidence. It is not standing in front of a mirror and forcing yourself to believe slogans you do not feel. It is quieter than that. It is the moment you make a mistake and do not destroy yourself inside. It is the moment you feel behind in life and do not turn your path into a courtroom. It is the moment someone else succeeds and you do not use their blessing as a weapon against your own heart. It is the moment you notice jealousy, fear, insecurity, or sadness and say, "This too is part of my human experience. I can observe it without becoming it." Buddhism teaches that everything is changing. Your thoughts change. Your emotions change, your body changes, your identity changes, your fears change, your desires change. Even the version of you that feels not enough is not fixed. It is a passing condition shaped by causes, memories, habits, and beliefs. This is important because shame makes everything feel permanent. Shame says, "This is who you are." Awareness says, "This is what is arising. Those are very different things." "This is who I am" becomes a prison. This is what is arising creates space. In that space, healing begins. You may notice the thought, "I need to be better." Instead of obeying it immediately, you can ask, "Better for what? Better for whom? Better because my heart is calling me toward growth, or better because I am afraid of being rejected?" This question alone can change your life. Because not every desire to improve is pure, and not every delay is laziness. Sometimes your soul is tired of being dragged by fear. Sometimes what you call lack of discipline is actually emotional exhaustion from years of self-attack. Sometimes you do not need a harsher routine. You need a kinder reason to continue. A person can wake up early, work hard, eat well, read deeply, pray, meditate, serve others, and still be full of self-hatred. Another person can move slowly, make small progress, stumble often, and still grow beautifully because they are not poisoning the journey with shame. The outer action matters, yes, but the inner relationship matters too. Buddhism cares deeply about intention. The same action can create freedom or suffering depending on the mind behind it. You can exercise because you love your body and want to care for it, or because you hate your body and want to defeat it. You can study because you love wisdom, or because you feel worthless unless you are admired. You can help others from compassion, or because you fear being unnecessary. The action may look the same from outside, but inside the karma is different. This is why you must become honest about the hidden contract you may have made with life. Somewhere inside, you may have agreed to a painful contract that says, "I will love myself when I become better." But the problem is, the mind controlled by shame never clearly defines better. It keeps changing the terms. You become calmer, but now you are not successful enough. You become successful, but now you are not attractive enough. You become attractive, but now you are not spiritual enough. You become spiritual, but now you are not healed enough. Shame is a terrible judge because it never closes the case. Buddhist self-worth begins when you tear up that contract. Not by saying, "I am perfect," but by saying, "I am worthy of compassion while I am still learning." That sentence is not weakness, it is freedom. Because when you stop needing hatred to motivate yourself, you discover a deeper strength. A strength that does not panic every time you fall. A strength that does not need applause to continue. A strength that does not collapse when progress is slow. A strength that can bow to reality and still take the next step. There is also a strange pride hidden inside the need to always be better. This may sound uncomfortable, but it is worth seeing. Sometimes the mind wants to become so improved, so healed, so wise, so successful that it will never have to feel ordinary pain again. It wants to rise above the human condition. It wants to become untouchable. But Buddhism does not teach us to become untouchable. It teaches us to become awake. And being awake does not mean you never feel fear, sadness, insecurity, or disappointment. It means you recognize these experiences without letting them control your whole identity. You do not need to become a person who never struggles. You need to become a person who does not turn struggle into self-hatred. You do not need to become a person who never feels behind. You need to become a person who does not measure the sacredness of life with someone else's timeline. You do not need to become a person who is always calm. You need to become a person who can return to awareness when the storm passes through. This is real growth. Not the kind that looks perfect online, not the kind that needs to be praised, the kind that slowly changes how you live inside your own mind. And maybe this is the part that touches the wound most deeply. The version of you that you are trying so hard to escape was once doing its best to survive. The insecure part, the anxious part, the overthinking part, the part that seeks approval, the part that compares, the part that feels behind, the part that wants to be chosen, the part that keeps trying to become better before resting. These parts did not appear from nowhere. They were shaped by life. They were shaped by moments when you did not feel safe enough to simply be. They were shaped by times when love felt uncertain, approval felt scarce, or mistakes felt dangerous. So when you attack these parts of yourself, you are attacking the very parts that carried you through pain. They may not be wise anymore, they may not be helpful now, but they were trying to protect you. This is why Buddhism teaches compassion with awareness. You do not have to let old patterns control you, but you also do not have to hate them. You can say, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I do not need to live this way anymore." That is healing, not rejection, but release. When you stop hating who you are now, you do not become passive. You become more honest. You can finally see what needs to change without the fog of shame. You can say, "This habit is hurting me." You can say, "This fear is limiting me." You can say, "This relationship pattern is not healthy." You can say, "This way of speaking to myself is deepening my suffering." But now these truths are not weapons. They are lamps. They show the path without burning down the person walking it. This is the Buddhist way of growth, gentle but not weak, honest but not cruel, patient but not asleep. It asks you to stop confusing self-hatred with responsibility. It asks you to stop confusing pressure with purpose. It asks you to stop confusing endless improvement with inner freedom. because you can spend your whole life becoming better and still never feel at home in yourself if you do not heal the part that believes your present self is unacceptable. So begin here, not with a huge promise, not with a dramatic change, not with another plan to become a completely different person by next month. Begin with one breath, one honest breath. Breathe in and notice the part of you that feels unfinished. Breathe out and stop attacking it for existing. Breathe in and notice the voice that says, I should be better. Breathe out and ask, can I grow without hatred? Breathe in and feel how tired you are from proving. Breathe out and allow yourself to be human. This is not the end of growth. This is the beginning of true growth, because the moment you stop treating yourself like a problem to solve, you start becoming a life to care for. And a life that is cared for grows differently. It grows with roots. It grows with patience. It grows with dignity. It grows not because it is ashamed of the soil, but because it has finally been given light. The hidden wound of always trying to be better begins to heal when you understand this simple truth. You are allowed to improve without rejecting yourself. You are allowed to change without calling your current self a failure. You are allowed to want more without despising what is already here. You are allowed to become wiser without being ashamed that you once did not know. You are allowed to heal slowly. You are allowed to be a work in progress and still be worthy of tenderness today. And as this lesson settles in, you may begin to notice how often your mind reaches outward, not only to become better, but to be approved, praised, chosen, and confirmed by others. Because once the wound of self-rejection is there, the heart often starts begging the world to say what it cannot yet say to itself. You are enough. That is where the next layer of healing begins, with the inner beggar who keeps asking the world for approval. And this is where the wound becomes even more painful, because once a person has learned to reject themselves, they rarely stop there. The heart begins to look outside for what it cannot yet give itself. It waits for someone's praise to feel valuable. It waits for someone's attention to feel visible. It waits for someone's message to feel wanted. It waits for someone's approval to feel safe. And little by little, without even noticing it, the soul becomes like a beggar standing at the door of the world, holding out an empty bowl and hoping someone will drop in a little proof that it matters. There is a quiet sadness in needing the world to tell you who you are. You may smile, work hard, dress well, speak kindly, and appear confident, but underneath it all, there may be a small, trembling question. Do they like me? Did I do well? Are they proud of me? Am I still important? Did I say the wrong thing? Why did they not respond? Why did they praise someone else and not me? And the hardest part is this. The more you depend on approval, the less peaceful approval becomes. At first, praise feels sweet. Someone notices your effort and your chest opens a little. Someone compliments your appearance and your confidence rises. Someone says, I am proud of you. And for a short moment, the restless mind becomes quiet. But then, like water poured into a cracked cup, the feeling begins to leak. Soon, you need another compliment, another sign, another message, another reaction, another confirmation. What once felt like encouragement slowly becomes hunger. And the hungry mind never says, enough. It only says, again. This is why outside validation can become addictive, not because you are weak and not because you are shallow, but because the mind loves temporary relief. When praise arrives, the body relaxes. When attention comes, the fear of being invisible goes quiet. When reassurance is given, the old wound feels covered. But covered is not the same as healed. A wound under a beautiful cloth is still a wound, and if you keep depending on others to cover it, you will panic every time they forget, leave, change, get busy, or fail to give you what your heart has learned to need. Buddhist wisdom teaches that craving is one of the roots of suffering. Most people hear craving and think only of money, pleasure, food, comfort, or desire. But craving can also be emotional. You can crave being chosen. You can crave being praised. You can crave being understood. You can crave being seen as good. You can crave being special in someone's eyes. You can crave the feeling of being needed. And because emotional craving hides inside normal human needs, it can be very difficult to notice. You tell yourself, "I just want love." But sometimes, beneath that sentence is a deeper ache saying, "I do not know who I am unless someone confirms it." There is nothing wrong with wanting appreciation. Human beings need connection. We are not stones. We are not meant to live without warmth, friendship, encouragement, or care. Buddhism does not ask you to become cold or detached in a harsh way. It does not say, "Do not enjoy kindness." It says, "Do not become enslaved by it." There is a difference between receiving love with gratitude and needing love as proof that you have worth. There is a difference between enjoying praise and depending on praise to survive emotionally. There is a difference between being happy that someone sees you and falling apart when they do not. The inner beggar is born when your sense of self becomes too dependent on other people's eyes. Instead of living from your own center, you begin to live from their reactions. Their smile becomes your permission to relax. Their silence becomes your punishment. Their approval becomes your medicine. Their distance becomes your disease. And this is a painful way to live because people are always changing. Their moods change, their attention changes, their opinions change, their priorities change, their ability to love you well may change. If your worth is tied to something unstable, your peace will always shake. This is why one ignored message can ruin a whole day. This is why one cold response can make you question the entire relationship. This is why one person's opinion can feel heavier than your own truth. This is why you may replay conversations long after they have ended, searching for signs that you were accepted or rejected. The mind that depends on approval becomes a detective of danger. It studies tone, facial expressions, delays, compliments, silence, and small changes in behavior. It is not trying to be dramatic. It is trying to feel safe. But safety built on other people's approval is fragile. It is like building a house on moving water. You may decorate it beautifully, but it cannot hold you for long. The Buddha's path points you back to something steadier, not an ego that says, "I need no one," but an inner awareness that says, "I can enjoy love without losing myself inside the need for it." The real pain of approval addiction is not that you want people to like you. The real pain is that you begin to abandon your own truth in order to be liked. You laugh when something hurts. You stay quiet when you want to speak. You agree when your heart disagrees. You over-explain so nobody misunderstands you. You apologize even when you did nothing wrong. You change your personality depending on who is in the room. You become careful, polished, pleasant, and acceptable, but somewhere inside the real you starts to feel lonely. This is one of the most dangerous effects of living for approval. It does not only make you hungry, it makes you disappear. You may still be seen by others, but not as you truly are. They see the version you built to survive their judgment. They see the helpful one, the calm one, the funny one, the strong one, the easy one, the impressive one, the one who does not need too much, ask too much, feel too much, or disturb the comfort of others. And then, even when they praise you, the praise does not fully enter, because a hidden part of you knows they are praising the mask, not the person beneath it. This is why some people can receive a lot of attention and still feel unseen. They are being noticed, yes, but not known. They are being admired, but not met. They are being praised, but not held in truth. And the heart knows the difference. Attention can touch the surface, but truth reaches the roots. If you keep feeding the mask, the soul remains hungry. Buddhism invites you to return to awareness, because awareness is the beginning of freedom. You cannot heal the hunger for approval by pretending you do not have it. You heal it by seeing it clearly. You notice the moment your mood rises because someone praised you. You notice the moment your body tightens because someone did not respond. You notice the urge to check, perform, explain, please, impress, or seek reassurance. You do not shame yourself for it. You simply say, this is craving. This is the mind reaching outward. This is the old wound asking the world to feed it. That small moment of noticing is powerful. It creates space between you and the hunger. Before awareness, the hunger controls you. After awareness, you can observe it. And what you can observe, you do not have to obey immediately. You can feel the urge to seek reassurance and still pause. You can want praise and still not chase it. You can feel rejected and still not turn it into a story about your whole life. This is not easy at first, but it is one of the most beautiful forms of inner strength. The mind addicted to approval often believes every feeling needs an answer from the outside. If you feel anxious, someone must reassure you. If you feel insecure, someone must compliment you. If you feel unseen, someone must notice you. If you feel unsure, someone must confirm your choice. But Buddhist practice teaches you to sit with feelings long enough to learn from them, not drown in them, not worship them, not believe every story they bring, but sit with them gently and ask, what is this feeling trying to show me? Sometimes the need for praise is really the need to recognize your own effort. Sometimes the hunger for attention is really grief from years of feeling invisible. Sometimes the need for reassurance is really fear that you cannot trust yourself. Sometimes the desire to be chosen is really a deeper longing to stop abandoning your own heart. When you look carefully, you begin to see that outside validation is often a substitute for an inner relationship that has not yet been built. This is why healing cannot only be about saying, I do not care what people think. That sentence may sound strong, but often it is just armor. True freedom is softer and deeper. It says, I care because I am human, but I will not hand over my worth. You can care about someone's opinion without making it your identity. You can listen to feedback without letting it become a sentence against your soul. You can enjoy being appreciated without needing applause to feel real. You can feel hurt by rejection without turning it into proof that you are nothing. There is a Buddhist lesson here about the self. The self we defend so fiercely is often not as solid as we think. Much of what we call me is built from memories, labels, reactions, habits, and stories. Someone calls you intelligent, and you cling to that identity. Someone calls you difficult, and you fear that identity. Someone praises your beauty, and you start depending on being seen that way. Someone criticizes your weakness, and you carry it for years. The mind collects these words like stones and builds a house out of them. Then it sits inside that house and says, this is who I am. But are you only the words people have spoken over you? Are you only the praise you received? Are you only the criticism you endured? Are you only the attention you gained, the rejection you felt, the applause you missed, the silence that hurt you? Buddhism says no. These things arise and pass. They shape experience, but they are not your deepest nature. When you stop clinging to every outside opinion as if it defines you, you begin to feel a freedom that is quiet but strong. This does not mean you ignore wisdom from others. Sometimes people see things we cannot see. Sometimes feedback helps us grow. Sometimes correction protects us from pride. But there is a difference between learning from others and begging them to tell us we are allowed to exist. A wise person can receive correction without collapsing because their worth is not on trial. A wounded person may hear even gentle feedback as rejection, because deep down, they already fear they are not enough. That is why the healing must happen inside the place where worth has been made dependent on approval. One way to begin is to watch what happens in your body when validation does not come. Maybe you post something and nobody responds. Maybe you help someone and they do not say thank you. Maybe you dress nicely and no one compliments you. Maybe you speak and someone does not seem impressed. Maybe you share your pain and the other person does not understand. In those moments, instead of rushing to fix the discomfort, pause. Notice the heat, the tightness, the sinking feeling, the restless thoughts. Then say to yourself, "This is the old hunger. It is painful, but it is not dangerous. I can stay with myself." That sentence matters. I can stay with myself. Because approval addiction often makes you leave yourself. You run toward others for relief. You chase messages, reactions, explanations, and proof. You place your emotional stability in someone else's hands, but every time you stay with yourself instead, you teach the heart a new truth. I am not abandoned just because someone else is not giving me attention right now. This is how inner safety is built. Not through one dramatic decision, but through small moments of not deserting yourself. You also begin to practice giving yourself the recognition you keep seeking, not in a fake way, not with empty words, but with honest witnessing. At the end of the day, instead of asking, "Did they notice me?" ask, "Did I notice myself? Did I notice my effort? Did I notice how hard I tried to be patient? Did I notice the moment I wanted to react but chose calm? Did I notice the quiet courage it took to continue? Did I notice that I showed up even while carrying pain?" If you never witness your own life, you will keep needing others to do it for you. This is not arrogance. This is mindfulness. You are not worshipping yourself. You are simply refusing to be invisible to your own awareness. Many people are generous witnesses for others, but cruelly absent from themselves. They can encourage a friend, praise a child, comfort a partner, admire a stranger, and celebrate someone else's progress. But when it comes to their own effort, they dismiss it. They say, "It was nothing." They say, "I should have done more." They say, "Other people are doing better." So the inner beggar remains hungry because the person who lives closest to the heart keeps refusing to feed it. Buddhist loving-kindness practice can help here. Loving-kindness is not sentimental weakness. It is the training of the heart to stop living in hostility. You can place a hand over your chest and offer simple words like, "May I be at peace. May I be free from fear. May I learn to see myself clearly. May I stop begging for worth from places that cannot give it." At first, these words may feel strange. The mind may reject them. It may say, "This is foolish." But that is only because harshness has become familiar. Keep practicing gently. A mind trained in self-criticism will not become kind in one night, but every sincere moment plants a seed. Another important practice is learning to enjoy goodness without turning it into identity. When someone praises you, receive it with gratitude, but do not cling. Let it be a flower placed in your hand, not a chain around your neck. Say thank you. Let it warm you. But do not build your worth on it, because if praise becomes your foundation, criticism becomes an earthquake. If attention becomes your food, silence becomes starvation. If approval becomes your mirror, disapproval becomes your death. The free heart receives praise like sunlight, but it does not panic when clouds pass. This is especially important in a world built to feed the inner beggar. Modern life trains people to measure themselves constantly. Likes, views, comments, replies, followers, invitations, compliments, comparisons. A person can wake up peaceful, check a screen, and suddenly feel small. Someone else's success appears, and your own life feels behind. Someone else gets attention, and your own worth feels reduced. Someone else is praised, and your mind asks, "What about me?" This is not because you are bad, it is because the mind, when untrained, compares and clings. It turns life into a marketplace of value. Buddhist awareness helps you step out of that marketplace. It reminds you that your life is not a product waiting for ratings. Your heart is not a performance needing applause. Your path is not a contest. Your worth is not reduced because someone else is celebrated. A candle does not become less bright because another candle is lit. But the approval-hungry mind does not understand this at first. It believes attention is limited, love is scarce, and being unnoticed means being unworthy. So you must teach it slowly. Another person's praise is not my rejection. Another person's beauty is not my ugliness. Another person's success is not my failure. Another person being chosen does not mean I have been erased. This is where compassion becomes practical. You begin to see that the inner beggar is not shameful, it is wounded. It is the part of you that learned to survive by watching people closely. It learned to ask, are they pleased with me? Because maybe displeasing people once felt unsafe. It learned to perform because maybe being natural was criticized. It learned to seek reassurance because maybe love once felt unpredictable. So you do not heal this part by insulting it. You heal it by becoming the steady presence it never had. When the inner beggar asks, do they like me? You can answer, maybe, maybe not, but I will not leave you. When it asks, was I good enough? You can answer, we can learn without turning this into shame. When it asks, why did they not choose me? You can answer, painful things happen, but rejection is not the whole truth of who we are. When it asks, how do I prove I matter? You can answer, by living with awareness, kindness, and integrity, not by begging for signs. Integrity is one of the strongest medicines for approval addiction. When you live far from your values, you need more approval to feel stable. But when you live close to your values, something inside becomes grounded. You may still want people to understand you, but you are less desperate. You may still feel pain when criticized, but you are not destroyed. You can ask, did I act with honesty? Did I speak with kindness? Did I respect myself? Did I cause harm? Did I correct what needed correcting? These questions return power to your own awareness. They help you stop living as a puppet of other people's moods. The more you practice this, the more you realize that approval is pleasant, but not sacred. Attention is enjoyable, but not identity. Reassurance is comforting, but not the source of your being. People can love you and still misunderstand you. People can praise you and still not know you deeply. People can reject you and still be wrong about your value. People can ignore you and still not reduce your existence by one drop. When this truth enters the body, you begin to breathe differently. There is a deep peace in no longer auditioning for everyone's acceptance. You stop entering every room with the silent question, who do I need to become here? You stop shrinking around strong personalities. You stop bending your truth to avoid disappointing people. You stop trying to be liked by people whose values are not even aligned with yours. You stop confusing being approved with being loved. You stop chasing the warmth of those who only notice you when you perform. And then something beautiful happens. Your relationships become cleaner. When you no longer beg for approval, you can love more honestly. You can give without secretly asking, will this make them value me? You can listen without performing goodness. You can speak without forcing agreement. You can accept compliments without becoming dependent. You can accept criticism without becoming broken. You can let people have their own thoughts, feelings, and reactions without making each one a verdict on your worth. This is real emotional maturity, not being untouched by people, but not being owned by their reactions, not rejecting connection, but no longer using connection to escape yourself, not becoming cold, but becoming rooted. A tree still feels the wind, but it does not become the wind. In the same way, you may feel praise, criticism, attention, or silence, but you do not have to become any of them. To stop depending on outside validation, you must also learn the sacred art of returning to yourself before reacting. When you feel the urge to seek reassurance, pause and breathe. Ask, what am I needing right now? Maybe you need rest. Maybe you need comfort. Maybe you need clarity. Maybe you need to tell the truth. Maybe you need to let the feeling pass without feeding it. Maybe you need to remember that not every silence is rejection, not every delay is abandonment, and not every lack of praise means failure. This pause is not small. It is a doorway. In that pause, you take back the bowl from the inner beggar. You stop holding it out to the world and begin filling it with presence. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough to show the wounded part of you that there is another way to live. The goal is not to never need encouragement again. The goal is to stop being ruled by the need. The goal is not to become immune to rejection. The goal is to stop letting rejection define your whole being. The goal is not to stop enjoying praise. The goal is to enjoy it freely, without becoming afraid of losing it. The goal is not to become independent in a lonely way. The goal is to become inwardly whole enough to connect without begging, and maybe this is the truth your heart has been waiting to hear. You do not have to be constantly approved of to be real. You do not have to be constantly praised to be valuable. You do not have to be constantly reassured to be safe. You do not have to be constantly chosen to belong to life. Your worth does not disappear when someone fails to notice it. A diamond does not become ordinary because a blind person walks past it. A flower does not lose its fragrance because no one stops to praise it. The moon does not beg the night to confirm its light. You can be here without applause. You can grow without witnesses. You can be kind without being thanked. You can be beautiful without being desired. You can be wise without being admired. You can be enough even in the rooms where no one claps, no one understands, no one chooses, no one says your name. This is not sadness, this is freedom. When the inner beggar becomes quiet, you do not lose love. You become capable of receiving love without fear. You do not lose connection. You become capable of connection without losing yourself. You do not lose ambition. You become capable of action without performing for worth. You do not lose softness. You become softer because you are no longer desperate. And as this lesson settles, you may begin to feel the next doorway opening. Because once you stop begging the world for approval, you are left with something many people spend their whole lives avoiding: yourself. Not the polished self, not the pleasing self, not the improved self, not the self that performs strength so nobody asks questions. The real self, with its shame, flaws, regrets, tenderness, fear, and quiet hopes. And this is where Buddhist healing becomes even deeper, because the next step is learning how to meet yourself without flinching. And this is where many people quietly turn back, because it is easier to chase approval than to sit with the self that has been craving it. It is easier to ask the world to tell you that you matter than to look inside and meet the part of you that still feels ashamed, unfinished, afraid, and unworthy. The moment outside noise becomes quiet, the hidden things begin to rise. The old regret, the secret insecurity, the memory you try not to touch, the flaw you keep hiding, the question you do not want to ask because the answer may hurt. And yet, this is exactly where Buddhist healing begins. There is a kind of courage nobody claps for. It is not loud. It does not look impressive. It does not need an audience. It is the courage to sit alone with yourself and not run, to feel what is there without immediately covering it with distraction, to admit what hurts without turning it into a performance, to see your shame without becoming your shame, to notice your flaws without using them as proof that you are broken. This kind of courage may look small from the outside, but inside the soul, it is a revolution. Most people do not fear silence because silence is empty. They fear silence because silence is honest. When the phone is down, when the room is quiet, when there is no one to impress, no one to please, no task to hide behind, the mind starts showing you what you have been carrying. This is why many people stay busy even when they are tired. They keep scrolling, working, talking, planning, helping, fixing, moving and consuming, because stillness feels like a door opening to a room they have avoided for years. But the room is not there to destroy you. It is there to be cleaned, understood, and finally made safe. Buddhist practice teaches that freedom begins with seeing clearly. Not seeing yourself through punishment, and not seeing yourself through denial, but seeing yourself as you are in this moment. This sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest things for the human mind to do. The mind wants to exaggerate or escape. It either says, "I am terrible," or it says, "Nothing is wrong." It either drowns in shame or hides behind pride. But awareness takes a different path. Awareness says, "Let me see what is here," not to judge it, not to decorate it, not to pretend it is better than it is, just to see it. To meet yourself without flinching means you stop turning away every time discomfort appears. It means you can notice shame in the body and say, "This is shame arising." It means you can remember something you regret and say, "This is regret asking for wisdom." It means you can feel insecurity and say, "This is fear looking for safety." You do not have to instantly fix every feeling. You do not have to explain it to everyone. You do not have to act strong before you are ready. You simply learn to sit beside what is true without abandoning yourself. This is very different from the way many people were taught to handle pain. Some were taught to hide it. Some were taught to pray it away quickly. Some were taught to act tough. Some were taught to laugh so nobody would ask questions. Some were taught that being sensitive was weakness, that needing comfort was childish, that admitting fear meant failure. So they grew up becoming experts at leaving themselves. They could smile while hurting, stay useful while exhausted, appear calm while breaking inside and say, "I am fine," even when their whole body was begging to be heard. But Buddhism does not ask you to pretend. It asks you to wake up. And waking up means you stop confusing emotional numbness with peace. There are people who say they are peaceful, but really they have only become disconnected from what they feel. They do not cry because they are not moved. They do not speak because they are afraid. They do not react because they have buried the reaction so deeply they cannot hear it anymore. That is not liberation. That is a locked room inside the heart. True peace is not the absence of feeling. True peace is the ability to feel without being ruled, destroyed, or defined by the feeling. This is why meeting yourself without flinching is not about becoming dramatic with your pain. It is not about sitting there and feeding every sad thought until it becomes a storm. It is not about replaying the past until you become trapped inside it. Buddhist awareness is not emotional indulgence. It is gentle observation. You let the feeling come close enough to be known, but not so close that it becomes your master. You give it space, but not the throne. You say, "I see you," not, "You are all of me." Shame especially needs this kind of awareness because shame loves darkness. Shame grows when it is hidden, denied, and feared. It whispers, "Do not let anyone see this. Do not even look at it yourself. If you look, you will find something ugly." So people keep running. They run from old mistakes, from their bodies, from their desires, from their failures, from their awkwardness, from their family wounds, from their financial struggles, from their loneliness, from their envy, from the parts of themselves that do not match the image they want to present. But whatever you refuse to meet does not disappear. It waits. It shapes your reactions from the shadows. A person who has not met their shame may become defensive whenever corrected. They may become jealous when others succeed. They may become desperate in love. They may over-explain every small mistake. They may avoid opportunities because failure feels too exposing. They may reject people first to avoid being rejected later. They may act superior because feeling ordinary is too painful. They may become overly helpful because being needed feels safer than being known. These patterns are not random. They are often shame wearing different clothes. This is why you must learn to meet shame directly, but kindly, not by saying, "I am shameful," but by saying, "Shame is here," that one change matters. "I am shameful" becomes identity. "Shame is here" becomes awareness. When you say, "I am broken," the whole self is condemned. When you say, "A broken feeling is arising," space appears. In that space you can breathe. In that space you can learn. In that space you can choose your next step instead of being dragged by old pain. Buddhist meditation helps because it trains you to watch the mind without believing every thought. When you sit quietly, you may notice how wild the mind is. It jumps to the past, then the future, then fear, then fantasy, then judgment, then memory, then comparison. At first you may think you are failing at meditation because your mind will not stay quiet. But the goal is not to force the mind into silence like a prisoner. The goal is to see the movement clearly. The seeing itself is part of the healing. You begin to realize, "I am not every thought that passes through me. I am the one who can notice." This realization is powerful for self-worth, because the thought, "I am not enough," may arise, but now you do not have to bow to it. The thought, "I ruined everything," may arise, but you do not have to build a home inside it. The thought, "People will reject me if they know the real me," may arise, but you can observe it as fear, not truth. This is how the mind slowly becomes less dangerous. Not because thoughts disappear, but because you stop treating every thought like a command from heaven. To sit with your flaws without running away means you let yourself be a full human being, not a polished statue, not a spiritual image, not a perfect character in someone else's story. A human being, someone who has been selfish at times and kind at times, wise in some moments and foolish in others, brave sometimes and afraid sometimes, generous sometimes and needy sometimes, calm sometimes and reactive sometimes. This does not make you false. It makes you human. The problem begins when you believe that having flaws cancels your worth. Buddhism does not deny harmful actions. It does not say, "Everything is fine, do whatever you want." It teaches responsibility, compassion, and right action. But responsibility is not the same as self-hatred. You can look at a flaw and say, "This needs attention," without saying, "I am disgusting." You can admit, "I hurt someone," without turning that into, "I deserve no peace." You can say, "This pattern is unskillful," without deciding that your whole life is a failure. This is the difference between wisdom and shame. Wisdom corrects, shame condemns. Wisdom opens a path, shame locks the door. Regret is another place where people flinch. There are memories that rise like smoke in the mind. Things you wish you had not said. Choices you wish you had not made. People you wish you had treated differently. Chances you missed. Years you feel you wasted. Times you were too afraid, too proud, too silent, too trusting, too careless, too angry, or too blind to see what mattered. And when these memories come, the old habit is to push them away quickly or punish yourself for them again and again. but neither response brings freedom. Buddhist practice invites you to hold regret like a teacher, not a judge. Regret can become poison if you use it to attack your identity, but regret can become medicine if you allow it to deepen your awareness. The question is not, how do I erase what happened? The past cannot be unlived. The deeper question is, what is this regret asking me to understand? Maybe it is asking you to become more honest. Maybe it is asking you to listen sooner. Maybe it is asking you to stop betraying your values for acceptance. Maybe it is asking you to forgive your younger self for not having the wisdom you have now. Maybe it is asking you to make repair where repair is possible and to live differently where repair is not possible. There is a tenderness needed here because many people judge their past self with the awareness of their present self. They look back and say, "How could I not know better?" But at that time, you were living with the understanding, fear, wounds and conditioning you had then. This does not remove responsibility, but it brings context. A child cannot lift what only an adult can carry. A wounded person cannot always choose with the clarity of a healed person. An afraid person may make choices that a safe person would not make. Seeing this does not excuse everything. It softens the cruelty that keeps you trapped. To meet yourself without flinching also means you stop pretending to be stronger than you feel. This is not easy in a world that praises strength more than honesty. Many people would rather be called strong than be truly supported. They would rather collapse in private than admit they need help. They would rather carry pain silently than risk being seen as weak. But what kind of strength requires you to lie about your own heart? What kind of peace depends on hiding your wounds? Sometimes the strongest sentence is not, "I am fine." Sometimes it is, "This hurts, and I am willing to be honest about it." Buddhism teaches compassion, and compassion begins where pretense ends. You cannot offer real compassion to the version of yourself you refuse to admit exists. If you keep pretending you are not insecure, insecurity cannot be held. If you keep pretending you are not lonely, loneliness cannot be comforted. If you keep pretending you are not afraid, fear cannot be understood. The parts of you that need kindness most are often the parts you keep hiding from your own eyes. This is why honesty is healing. Not harsh honesty, but clean honesty. The kind that says, "I am jealous," without turning it into drama. "I am afraid," without becoming ashamed. "I want to be loved," without mocking the need. "I made a mistake," without collapsing into self-hatred. "I do not know yet," without pretending certainty. Clean honesty does not make you smaller. It makes you real. And the real self can be healed. The false self can only be maintained. When you sit with insecurity, you may notice it is often not about the present moment alone. It carries echoes. A small comment can awaken an old humiliation. A quiet room can awaken an old loneliness. Someone else being chosen can awaken an old fear of being unwanted. A mistake at work can awaken childhood memories of being criticized. This is why your reaction may feel bigger than the situation. You are not only responding to what happened now, sometimes you are responding to every similar pain that was never fully held. Buddhist mindfulness helps by bringing you back to the present. You can ask, what is happening right now? Not, what did this remind me of? Not, what story is my fear creating? But, what is actually here? Maybe someone has not replied yet, that is all. The mind says, they do not care. Maybe you made an error, that is all. The mind says, I am useless. Maybe someone disagreed with you, that is all. The mind says, I am rejected. Mindfulness gently separates fact from story, and when fact and story are separated, suffering loses some of its power. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming accurate. So much suffering comes from believing every story pain creates. Pain says, "This will never change." Awareness says, "This is a painful moment." Pain says, "Nobody loves me." Awareness says, "I feel unloved right now." Pain says, "I am a failure." Awareness says, "I am experiencing disappointment." These may seem like small changes in language, but they create a new relationship with the mind. They stop temporary states from becoming permanent identities. There is also the practice of staying with the body. Shame, regret, and insecurity are not only thoughts, they live in the body. A tight chest, a heavy stomach, a hot face, a closed throat, a restless hand, a tired back, a nervous breath. Many people try to solve emotional pain only by thinking, but sometimes thinking becomes another escape. The body is more honest than the story. When you sit still and feel the body, you are no longer arguing with the feeling. You are allowing it to move through with awareness. You can place your attention gently on the breath, not to force calm, but to create safety. You can feel your feet on the ground. You can relax your jaw. You can soften your shoulders. You can say, "This is difficult, but I am here." This simple act teaches the nervous system something new. It teaches it that discomfort does not always mean danger. It teaches it that you can feel shame without disappearing. You can feel regret without drowning. You can feel insecurity without obeying it. You can stay. The ability to stay is one of the deepest forms of healing, because many wounds were formed when you could not stay with yourself. You ran into pleasing, achieving, hiding, blaming, distracting, or pretending. Now, slowly, you return. You become the person who does not leave when the inner room becomes messy. You become the witness who can sit beside the trembling parts without rushing them to become more acceptable. This is how trust grows inside, not because you never hurt, but because you no longer abandon yourself in the hurt. Meeting yourself without flinching also changes how you relate to others. When you cannot face your own shame, you may become easily offended, because every correction touches a hidden wound. When you cannot face your flaws, you may judge others harshly, because their imperfection reminds you of what you hate in yourself. When you cannot face your regrets, you may avoid honest conversations, because truth feels too dangerous. But when you begin to meet yourself with awareness, you become less defensive. You can listen more deeply. You can apologize without feeling erased. You can receive truth without turning it into humiliation. This is why inner work is not selfish. A person who can sit with themselves becomes safer for others. They do not need everyone to protect their ego. They do not need every conversation to prove they are right. They do not need to attack people for seeing their blind spots. They can say, "That hurt to hear, but I will look at it." They can say, "I did not see that before." They can say, "I am sorry." These sentences are simple, but they require a self that is not built on denial. Buddhist humility is not self-hatred. It is the peaceful understanding that you are still learning. You do not have to know everything. You do not have to be beyond correction. You do not have to present a perfect image. You are part of life, and life is always changing, teaching, breaking open, and renewing. When you understand this, flaws become less terrifying. They are not proof that you are unworthy. They are places where awareness has not yet fully entered. This is a rare kind of gentleness. You stop looking at yourself like a final verdict and begin looking at yourself like a living process. There are causes and conditions behind your habits. There are reasons you protect yourself the way you do. There are old lessons your mind learned too well. There are fears that made sense once, even if they limit you now. Seeing the causes does not make you helpless. It gives you wisdom. If something was learned, something new can be learned. If a pattern was built, a new path can be built. If the mind was trained in shame, it can be trained in compassion. But this training takes patience. You cannot bully yourself into gentleness. You cannot rush deep healing and then shame yourself for not being healed. That is the same old wound wearing spiritual clothes. The practice is to return again and again. You notice self-judgment, and you return. You notice the urge to hide, and you return. You notice regret hardening into identity, and you return. You notice insecurity asking for a mask, and you return. This returning is the path. There may be days when you feel strong and open. There may be days when you feel small and guarded. Do not turn either day into a permanent story. The mind changes like weather. Some days are clear, some days are heavy. Some days old pain rises for no clear reason. Some days you feel progress, and some days you feel like the same wound is speaking again. But the question is not, why am I not perfectly healed? The question is, can I meet this moment with more awareness than before? That is enough. That is real practice. To meet yourself without flinching, you must also stop confusing exposure with danger. Many people feel that if they see their shame clearly, it will destroy them. But often, what destroys a person slowly is the energy spent avoiding it. Avoidance drains the spirit. It keeps you performing. It keeps you afraid of being found out. It makes intimacy difficult because you believe being known is unsafe. But when you gently turn toward the hidden parts, you may discover that they are not monsters. They are wounded places. They are younger places. They are memories, unmet needs, fears, and beliefs waiting for light. Light does not harm what needs healing. Light reveals. And when something is revealed, it can finally be understood. This is why confession, journaling, meditation, prayer, therapy, honest friendship, and quiet reflection can feel so relieving when done safely. Not because they change the past, but because they bring the hidden into a space where it no longer has to control you from behind the curtain. Still, you must be wise. Meeting yourself does not mean forcing yourself to relive everything all at once. Buddhism teaches the middle way here too. Do not suppress, but do not overwhelm yourself. Do not run, but do not flood your heart beyond its capacity. Healing is not violence. You can approach the difficult places slowly, like entering a dark room with a small lamp, not by tearing the roof off and demanding instant light. Some memories and wounds may need the support of trusted people, trained guidance, or safe community. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. There is also great power in naming what you feel. When you name shame as shame, fear as fear, grief as grief, insecurity as insecurity, regret as regret, you stop being swallowed by vague heaviness. Naming gives shape to the storm. It helps the mind understand, this is an experience passing through me. In Buddhist practice, this kind of noting can be simple. Thinking, fear, judgment, tightness, remembering, wanting to hide. You do not need complicated words, you only need honest attention. And with honest attention, compassion begins to feel possible. You may start seeing yourself not as a problem, but as someone who has been trying to survive with the tools you had. Some tools helped before, but hurt now. Pleasing may have helped you avoid conflict, but now it steals your voice. Perfectionism may have helped you gain approval, but now it steals your rest. Emotional hiding may have protected you from judgment, but now it keeps you lonely. Self-criticism may have felt like control, but now it keeps you wounded. When you see this clearly, you can put down tools that no longer serve you without hating the self who picked them up. This is where Buddhist compassion becomes deeply practical. It is not just saying kind things. It is understanding suffering and responding with care. When you notice shame, you do not feed it with more shame. When you notice fear, you do not mock it. When you notice a flaw, you do not make it your identity. You ask, what response would reduce suffering here? Sometimes the answer is rest. Sometimes it is apology. Sometimes it is discipline. Sometimes it is truth, sometimes it is silence, sometimes it is leaving a harmful situation, sometimes it is staying and breathing. Compassion is not always soft in appearance, but its intention is freedom from suffering. The more you practice meeting yourself this way, the less you need to pretend. And this is a beautiful relief. You do not need to act like you have no regrets. You can let regret teach you. You do not need to act like you have no insecurities. You can let insecurity show you where kindness is needed. You do not need to act like you are beyond shame. You can let shame dissolve in the warmth of awareness. You do not need to act stronger than you are. You can be honest and still continue. This honesty also opens the door to real self-respect. Many people think self-respect comes from looking flawless, but deeper self-respect comes from being able to face yourself truthfully. When you can sit with your own heart without running, you begin to trust yourself. You know that even if you make a mistake, you will not abandon yourself. Even if you feel ashamed, you will not destroy yourself. Even if you are misunderstood, you will not lose yourself completely. Even if old pain returns, you will meet it with more wisdom than before. This is the quiet strength Buddhism points toward. Not a hard strength that says, nothing affects me. Not a fake strength that says, I have no wounds. But a grounded strength that says, whatever arises, I will meet it with awareness. This kind of strength does not need to prove itself. It is felt in the way you breathe through discomfort, the way you pause before reacting, the way you tell the truth without cruelty, the way you return to the present after the mind runs into old stories. And maybe, as you listen to this, there is a part of you that already knows what you have been avoiding. Maybe it is not a huge secret. Maybe it is a feeling you keep pushing down. Maybe it is a regret you keep covering with busyness. Maybe it is an insecurity you hide under humor. Maybe it is a fear of being ordinary, unwanted, disappointing, or not as strong as people think. Whatever it is, you do not have to drag it into the light with force. You can simply begin by saying, I am willing to stop running from myself. That willingness is enough for the doorway to open. You do not need to solve your whole inner world tonight. You do not need to become fearless. You do not need to confess everything, understand everything, or heal everything at once. You only need to take one honest step toward yourself. One breath where you do not turn away. One moment where you stop pretending. One gentle recognition that says, yes, this is here, and I can meet it. The Buddhist practice of meeting yourself without flinching is really the practice of becoming your own safe place. Not because you are perfect, but because you are present. Not because you never feel shame, but because shame no longer has to live alone in the dark. Not because you never regret, but because regret can become wisdom instead of a prison. Not because insecurity disappears, but because you no longer let it write your identity. You stop running from the human parts of you and begin to hold them inside awareness. And when you can meet yourself this way, the false self begins to lose its power. Because you no longer need to hide behind a perfect image. You no longer need to perform worthiness so nobody sees the wound. You no longer need to become someone else just to feel safe in the eyes of others. The more you can sit with the truth of who you are, the less you need the mask that was built to protect you from rejection. And that is where the next lesson begins. With the false self you created to be accepted, and the freedom that comes when you finally stop performing your worth. And once you begin to meet yourself without flinching, something strange starts to happen. You begin to notice how much of your life was not truly lived from your real self, but from a version of you that was carefully built to avoid rejection. A version that learned what to hide, what to show, when to smile, when to stay quiet, when to be useful, when to be impressive, and when to disappear. That version may have helped you survive, but it may also be the reason you feel so tired. There is a deep exhaustion that comes from being loved for a version of you that is not fully true. You may be accepted, but not relaxed. You may be praised, but not peaceful. You may be included, but still feel lonely. Because somewhere inside, you know you are not simply being, you are performing, and the performance may be so old that you no longer call it performance. You call it your personality. You call it being nice. You call it being strong. You call it being mature. You call it being easy to love. But beneath it, there may be a hidden fear whispering, if they see the real me, they may leave. This is how the false self is born. Not always from vanity, not always from dishonesty, and not because a person is fake in a simple way. Many times the false self is born from pain. It is born the first time a person learns that their real feelings are too much for others. It is born when honesty brings punishment instead of understanding. It is born when a child discovers that being quiet gets more approval than being expressive. It is born when a person is loved more for achievement than for presence. It is born when rejection teaches the nervous system, do not show everything, hide the parts that may cost you love. So the heart becomes strategic. It studies people. It learns what earns warmth and what invites distance. It learns which version of itself is safe in which room. Around one person, it becomes funny. Around another, it becomes silent. Around another, it becomes helpful. Around another, it becomes successful. Around another, it becomes hard and untouchable. Around another, it becomes soft and agreeable. The person may not even realize they are changing shape. They are only trying to stay connected. The tragedy is that what begins as protection can become a prison. The mask that once helped you survive rejection can later block the love you truly want. Because real love cannot reach a self that is always hiding behind performance. Real connection requires some level of truth. Not every detail of your life must be shown to everyone, but if nobody ever meets the real you, then even in a crowd, you will feel alone. You will keep wondering why love does not satisfy you, when the deeper truth is that love is touching the costume, not the wound beneath it. Buddhist wisdom asks you to look at this with compassion, not shame. The false self is not something to hate, it is something to understand. It was built by causes and conditions. It was shaped by fear, family, culture, rejection, praise, punishment, comparison, disappointment, and the human need to belong. When you see this clearly, you stop asking, "Why am I like this?" with disgust and begin asking, "What was I trying to protect?" That question opens a door. Maybe you became the strong one because weakness was not safe. Maybe you became the funny one because sadness made people uncomfortable. Maybe you became the helper because being needed felt better than being ignored. Maybe you became the perfect one because mistakes were treated like failure. Maybe you became the quiet one because speaking your truth led to conflict. Maybe you became the impressive one because ordinary love was not offered freely. Maybe you became the agreeable one because disagreement once threatened connection. Each mask has a history. Each performance has a wound behind it. This is why healing cannot begin by simply saying, "Just be yourself." That phrase sounds beautiful, but for many people it is not easy. If the real self was once rejected, punished, mocked, controlled, compared, or ignored, then being yourself may not feel freeing at first. It may feel dangerous. The body may tighten. The voice may shake. The mind may panic. You may want to tell the truth, but something inside says, "Be careful. This is how people leave." So the work must be gentle. You do not rip the mask off with violence. You learn why it was created, thank it for protecting you, and slowly teach the body that truth is no longer the same as danger. This is the Buddhist way. Awareness before release. You cannot release what you do not see, and you cannot truly see what you keep judging. If you attack the false self, it will only hide deeper. But if you observe it kindly it begins to loosen. You notice when your voice changes to please someone. You notice when you say yes while your body says no. You notice when you exaggerate your success because you fear being seen as small. You notice when you hide your pain because you want to remain admired. You notice when you become overly calm, not because you are at peace, but because you are afraid of being called difficult. These moments of noticing are not failures. They are awakenings. Every time you see the performance clearly, you are already a little less trapped by it. Before awareness, the mask feels like you. After awareness, the mask becomes something you are wearing, and what you are wearing can be removed, softened, or chosen consciously. A false self often survives through constant monitoring. You monitor how people see you. You monitor your tone. You monitor your face. You monitor your words. You monitor whether you are being too emotional, too quiet, too needy, too confident, too honest, too ordinary, too visible, or too much. This is why social life can feel draining even when nothing bad happens. You are not only talking, you are managing an image. You are not only listening, you are calculating safety. You are not only present, you are editing yourself in real time. And because this editing happens so quickly, it can feel normal. But the body pays the price. The shoulders stay tense. The breath becomes shallow. The mind replays conversations later. You ask yourself, did I say too much? Did I sound foolish? Did they notice? Did I offend them? Did I seem weak? This is not simple overthinking. It is the nervous system trying to protect the false self from being exposed. It is exhausting because you are trying to control something you can never fully control, another person's perception. Buddhism teaches that clinging creates suffering, and clinging to an image of yourself is one of the heaviest forms of clinging. You cling to being seen as good, so criticism hurts like an attack on your existence. You cling to being seen as strong, so vulnerability feels shameful. You cling to being seen as intelligent, so not knowing becomes terrifying. You cling to being seen as kind, so setting boundaries feels cruel. You cling to being seen as successful, so slow seasons feel humiliating. The image becomes a small god, and you spend your life making offerings to it. But the image is fragile. It must be maintained every day. One mistake can threaten it. One rejection can crack it. One honest emotion can disturb it. One person who sees through it can frighten you. This is why the false self never gives real peace. It can earn praise, but it cannot rest. It can gain admiration, but it cannot feel safe. It can win approval, but it cannot experience true belonging. Because belonging requires truth, and the false self is built on concealment. The real self is not perfect. That is why it was hidden. The real self may feel deeply. The real self may need reassurance sometimes. The real self may have boundaries. The real self may disappoint people. The real self may not always know what to say. The real self may be quieter than the role you play, softer than the image you built, more sensitive than people expect, more tired than you admit, more uncertain than your confidence suggests. But the real self has something the false self will never have: aliveness. You can feel the difference. When you are performing, there is tension. When you are real, there is breath. When you are performing, you keep checking the room. When you are real, you can feel your own body. When you are performing, you feel relief only after people approve. When you are real, there is a quiet dignity, even if people do not understand. The real self may be afraid, but it is not divided. The false self may look confident, but it is always split between what it feels and what it shows. Healing begins when you stop performing worthiness, because performance keeps teaching the heart that worth is conditional. Every time you hide your truth to be accepted, a hidden message is reinforced. The real me is not safe. Every time you overgive to be loved, the heart learns, I must be useful to matter. Every time you pretend you are fine to avoid losing approval, the inner child learns, my pain makes me unwanted. Every time you shape yourself into what others prefer, the soul becomes more convinced that authenticity is dangerous. But every time you tell a small truth, the pattern weakens. Every time you say, I cannot do that, without over-explaining, something returns to you. Every time you admit, I do not know, without shame, something softens. Every time you let someone see your honest feeling without turning it into a performance, the real self gets a little more air. Every time you choose integrity over approval, you remind your nervous system that rejection may hurt, but self-abandonment hurts deeper. This is not a call to become careless with people. Being real does not mean saying everything you think. It does not mean using honesty as a weapon. It does not mean becoming rude and calling it authenticity. Buddhist truth is joined with compassion. Right speech asks, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it timely? Is it spoken with a mind that does not wish to harm? So the goal is not to throw the mask away and become uncontrolled. The goal is to stop lying to survive relationships that require your disappearance. Some people will benefit from your false self. They may prefer the version of you that never says no, never disagrees, never asks for care, never reveals hurt, never challenges them, never changes. When you begin to heal, they may say, you are different. They may say, you have changed. They may say, you are becoming selfish. But sometimes what they call selfish is simply you returning to your own body. Sometimes what they call attitude is your voice coming back. Sometimes what they call distance is your boundary finally standing up. This is where courage is needed, because healing the false self will not always make you more liked. It may make you more honest. It may reveal which relationships were built on your performance and which ones can hold your truth. Some people loved your usefulness, not your being. Some loved your silence, not your depth. Some loved your agreement, not your mind. Some loved your mask, not your face. This realization can hurt, but it also frees you. Because losing acceptance that required self-abandonment is not true loss. It is painful release. Buddhist detachment helps here. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging to acceptance at the cost of truth. You can love people and still let them be disappointed. You can respect people and still not become what they demand. You can value connection and still refuse to disappear for it. This kind of detachment is not cold. It is clean. It allows love to breathe without control, fear, or performance. To begin releasing the false self, you must become intimate with your own inner signals. The body often knows when you are being false before the mind admits it. You may feel a tightening when you say yes. You may feel heaviness after pretending. You may feel resentment after overgiving. You may feel numb after hiding your pain. You may feel small after laughing at something that hurt you. These are not random feelings. They are messages from the real self, knocking from behind the door. Listen to them gently. Ask yourself, where did I leave myself today? This question is simple, but it can reveal a lifetime. Did you leave yourself when you agreed to something that violated your peace? Did you leave yourself when you pretended not to care? Did you leave yourself when you performed confidence while needing comfort? Did you leave yourself when you chased someone's approval after your body already felt unsafe? Did you leave yourself when you made your needs smaller so someone else would not feel uncomfortable? Then ask the next question. What would returning to myself look like in this moment? Not dramatically, not perfectly, just honestly. Maybe returning to yourself means resting. Maybe it means telling the truth. Maybe it means not sending the message. Maybe it means apologizing. Maybe it means saying no. Maybe it means admitting you are hurt. Maybe it means allowing yourself to be seen without decorating the wound. Maybe it means choosing silence because speech would be performance, not truth. Buddhist practice brings you back to the present because the false self often lives in fear of future rejection. What if they leave? What if they judge me? What if they think I am difficult? What if I am no longer special? What if I disappoint them? The mind jumps ahead and starts building protection, but when you return to the breath, you come back to what is real now. You may notice, right now, I am safe enough to be honest with myself. Right now, I can feel this fear without obeying it. Right now, I do not need to build a whole identity around someone else's possible reaction. This present moment awareness is powerful because the false self feeds on imagined danger. It uses old wounds to predict future pain. If someone once rejected your truth, the false self says, never show truth again. If someone once mocked your softness, it says, become hard. If someone once used your vulnerability against you, it says, never need anyone. These rules may feel protective, but they also keep you trapped in the past. You are not responding to life as it is. You are responding to life as if every person is the old person who hurt you. Healing means learning to discern. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerable self. Buddhism is not asking you to open your heart foolishly to those who have proven unsafe. Wisdom matters, but discernment is different from hiding from everyone. Discernment says, I will reveal myself where there is care, respect, and trust. Fear says, I must never reveal myself anywhere. The first protects your dignity, the second imprisons your soul. This is why the path back to the real self must be both gentle and wise. Start with small truths in safe places. Say what you prefer. Admit when you are tired. Share a feeling with someone who has earned trust. Stop pretending to like what you do not like. Stop saying, it is okay, when it is not okay, if the moment allows honesty. Let your no be simple sometimes. Let your yes be real. Let your silence come from peace, not fear. Let your kindness come from love, not from the panic of being disliked. The false self also thrives on comparison. It watches how others are accepted and tries to copy the formula. Maybe if I become more attractive, I will be wanted. Maybe if I become more successful, I will be respected. Maybe if I become funnier, I will be included. Maybe if I become calmer, I will be loved. Maybe if I become spiritual enough, I will be admired. But the more you copy what seems to bring others approval, the farther you drift from your own nature. You may become impressive and still feel empty because you are decorating a life that does not feel like yours. Buddhism reminds you that everything has its own nature. A lotus does not need to become a rose to be sacred. A mountain does not need to flow like a river to be beautiful. A river does not need to stand like a mountain to be strong. But human beings suffer because they keep trying to become the shape that will be accepted. The real question is not, what version of me will they approve of? The deeper question is, what is true in me when I am not trying to win approval? That question may feel uncomfortable at first. You may not know the answer. If you have performed for years, the real self may feel quiet, almost forgotten. Do not panic. The real self is not gone. It has simply been waiting. It may return through small things, what you genuinely enjoy, what drains you, what you secretly miss, what you value, what makes your body relax, what makes your chest close, what truth keeps returning no matter how often you silence it. Pay attention, these are breadcrumbs leading you home. There is also grief in this process. When you realize how long you have performed worthiness, you may grieve the years spent trying to be acceptable. You may grieve the friendships where you were never fully yourself. You may grieve the love you earned by shrinking. You may grieve the younger version of you who believed they had to become someone else to keep people close. Let that grief come gently. It is not there to drown you. It is there to honor what was lost. Grief often appears when truth finally enters a room that has been locked for years. And after grief, there may be anger. Not violent anger, but clean anger. The kind that says, I should not have had to disappear to be loved. The kind that says, my needs mattered too. The kind that says, I am allowed to exist without constantly proving my usefulness. In Buddhist practice, anger must be handled carefully because it can burn you and others if left unexamined. But anger also contains information. It can show where boundaries were crossed, where dignity was denied, where truth was silenced. Do not worship anger, but do not instantly bury it either. Listen for the wisdom beneath the heat. Then return to compassion, because the goal is not to spend life blaming everyone who shaped the mask. Some people who rejected your real self were also living from their own wounds. Some did not know how to love without control. Some were repeating what they had learned. Some were limited by fear, culture, pride, or ignorance. Understanding this does not erase the hurt, and it does not require you to excuse harmful behavior. It simply helps you stop carrying poison. You can acknowledge what happened, protect yourself now, and still refuse to let bitterness become your new identity. The deeper you go, the more you see that the false self is tied to fear of emptiness. Without the roles, who are you? Without being the helpful one, the impressive one, the strong one, the beautiful one, the successful one, the calm one, the needed one, who remains? This question can feel frightening because the ego wants a solid label. But Buddhism teaches that the self is not a fixed object. You are a living flow of awareness, habits, intentions, body, memory, and consciousness, always changing. You do not need one rigid identity to be real. You can be alive without being trapped in a role. This is freedom, the freedom to be kind without being trapped as the nice one, the freedom to be strong without being forbidden to need support, the freedom to be wise without pretending to know everything, the freedom to be loving without becoming available to everyone, the freedom to be quiet without disappearing, the freedom to be visible without performing, the freedom to be unfinished without shame. When you stop performing worthiness, your actions become cleaner. You help because help is needed, not because you are trying to buy love. You speak because truth matters, not because you need to impress. You work because your life has purpose, not because your worth depends on achievement. You rest because your body is sacred, not because you have finally earned rest through exhaustion. You love because the heart is open, not because you are trying to secure your place in someone's life. This is what Buddhism means by right intention. The outer action may look ordinary, but the inner source changes. Instead of moving from fear, you begin moving from awareness. Instead of asking, "How do I look?" you begin asking, is this true? Is this kind? Is this necessary? Is this aligned? That shift slowly dissolves the false self, because the false self cannot survive where awareness and integrity are strong. There will still be moments when the old mask returns. Do not turn that into failure. Sometimes, around certain people, old versions of you will wake up automatically. You may suddenly become small around family. You may become overly pleasing around authority. You may become impressive around people you want to admire you. You may become silent around those who once dismissed you. This does not mean you have not healed. It means the body remembers. Meet that memory with patience. Notice it. Breathe. Choose one small act of truth. That is the practice. The goal is not to destroy every mask overnight. Some roles are useful. We all adapt to situations. You do not speak to a stranger the same way you speak to a close friend. You do not reveal everything in every room. Healthy adaptation is natural. The problem is not adaptation. The problem is self-abandonment. The problem is when you must become false to feel safe, loved, or valuable. The problem is when the mask becomes so tight that you forget your own face. So begin loosening it, not with drama, but with honesty. Notice the places where your smile is a shield. Notice the places where your silence is fear. Notice the places where your kindness is a bargain. Notice the places where your confidence is armor. Notice the places where your busyness is avoidance. Notice the places where your spirituality is another way to look healed instead of being truthful. This noticing is not condemnation. It is the lamp coming on. And when the lamp comes on, you may finally see the real self sitting quietly in the corner, not angry, just tired. Tired of being hidden, tired of being edited, tired of being told it is too much, not enough, too sensitive, too ordinary, too needy, too honest, too soft. And this real self does not need a grand speech from you. It needs your presence. It needs you to stop sending it away every time approval is on the line. It needs you to choose it in small daily ways until it believes you will no longer abandon it. This is where worth begins to feel different. Not like a performance, not like a reward, not like something you must earn by becoming pleasant, useful, successful, or easy to love. Worth begins to feel like a quiet home inside your own being. You may still enjoy acceptance, but you no longer worship it. You may still feel rejection, but you no longer let it define your entire identity. You may still wear certain roles in certain places, but you know how to return to yourself afterward. You know the mask is not your face, and the more you return, the more peaceful your life becomes. Not because everyone approves of you, but because you approve of your own honesty. Not because rejection disappears, but because rejection no longer has the power to make you betray yourself. Not because you become perfectly fearless, but because fear is no longer the architect of your personality. This is a deep healing. This is the moment you stop acting like a person who must convince the world of your value and start living like someone who remembers they were never empty to begin with. The false self was built to survive rejection, but the real self is where freedom lives. And once you begin to come home to that real self, another truth starts to appear. The feeling of not being enough did not begin today. It did not come from nowhere. It was planted through old moments, old wounds, old experiences, and old meanings your mind carried forward as if they were facts. And that is where the next lesson opens, with the understanding that feeling not enough is often not the truth of who you are, but a memory your heart has mistaken for reality. And once you understand that the false self was built to survive rejection, another question begins to rise quietly inside you. Who taught you that you needed a false self in the first place? Where did the feeling begin? When did your mind first decide that being yourself was not safe enough, good enough, lovable enough, or worthy enough? Because the feeling of not enough may seem like a fact today, but many times it is not truth speaking. It is memory speaking with the voice of truth. There are wounds that do not stay in the past just because time has moved forward. They follow people quietly. They enter the way a person thinks, chooses, loves, speaks, waits, hopes, and protects themselves. A moment that lasted only a few minutes can become a belief that lasts for years. A sentence someone said when you were young can become the voice you hear every time you make a mistake. A rejection that happened long ago can become the fear behind every new relationship. This is how the past hides inside the present. You may think you are reacting to what is happening now, but sometimes you are reacting to what happened before. Someone gives you a short reply, and your body feels abandoned. Someone corrects you gently, and your mind hears humiliation. Someone is chosen over you, and suddenly you feel small, unseen, and unwanted. Someone does not praise your effort, and your heart feels like it has failed. But if you look closely, The pain may be older than the moment. The present only touched a place that was already bruised. This is why feeling not enough can be so confusing. You may have evidence that you are growing. You may have people who care about you. You may have survived difficult things. You may have done good work, shown kindness, helped others, learned lessons, and carried burdens nobody saw. But still, one small trigger can make you feel like you are nothing. Why? Because memory does not always speak with logic. Memory speaks through the body. It speaks through tightness, fear, shame, panic, withdrawal, overthinking, and the sudden need to prove yourself again. Buddhist awareness teaches you to pause before believing the first story the mind tells. This is very important because the wounded mind can make an old belief look like a fresh truth. It says, they ignored you because you are not important. It says, you failed because you are not capable. It says, they left because you are not lovable. It says, you are behind because something is wrong with you. But awareness asks, is this true right now, or is this an old wound being awakened? That question can open a space inside suffering. Most people live for years without asking that question. They feel something strongly, so they assume it must be true. But a feeling can be real without being accurate. Your fear is real, but the danger may not be present. Your shame is real, but the identity it creates may be false. Your insecurity is real, but the story it tells may be old. Your pain deserves compassion, but not every conclusion pain makes deserves obedience. This is one of the deepest Buddhist lessons. Do not mistake what arises in the mind for ultimate truth. Thoughts arise, feelings arise, memories arise, old conditioning arises. But what arises is not always reality. It is a movement of the mind shaped by causes and conditions. When you understand this, you stop treating every painful belief as a command. You begin to observe it. You begin to ask where it came from. You begin to see that the thought, I am not enough, may not be wisdom. It may be a wound repeating itself. A child does not know how to separate experience from identity. If a child is ignored, they may not think, the adults around me are distracted, wounded, stressed, limited, or unable to give proper attention. The child may think, I am not worth noticing. If a child is criticized often, they may not think, this person does not know how to correct with kindness. They may think, something is wrong with me. If a child is loved only when they perform well, they may not think, this love has conditions. They may think, I must earn love by being excellent. This is how old experiences become inner beliefs. The mind tries to explain pain. It wants a reason. And if the reason is too complex, the young heart often chooses the simplest explanation. It must be me. That belief may be painful, but it gives the mind a strange sense of control. If the problem is me, then maybe I can fix me. Maybe if I become better, quieter, prettier, stronger, smarter, easier, more useful, more impressive, more spiritual, more successful, then I will not be hurt again. And there begins the long road of trying to heal a wound by becoming acceptable to the people, places, and memories that created it. But Buddhist wisdom gently interrupts this pattern. It says, look again. Look at the conditions, look at the causes, look at the mind's habit of turning pain into identity. Look at how one event became a story, how one story became a belief, how one belief became a personality, how one personality became a life of fear. This looking is not blame, it is liberation, because when you understand how something was formed, you stop seeing it as permanent. A belief is not born in a vacuum. It is planted, it is watered, it is repeated, it is strengthened by attention and fear. If you were compared often, the belief, I am behind, may have been watered. If your feelings were dismissed, the belief, "my needs are too much," may have been watered. If you were praised only for success, the belief, "I am valuable only when I achieve," may have been watered. If you were left without explanation, the belief, "people always leave because I am not enough," may have been watered. Over time, these beliefs begin to feel like your own voice, even though they may have started as someone else's limitation. This is why healing requires careful listening. Not every voice inside you belongs to your deepest self. Some voices are echoes, some are old judgments, some are family fears, some are cultural pressures, some are memories of rejection, some are the voices of people who never knew how to love without control. The mind collects these voices and plays them so often that you may mistake them for your own truth. But awareness asks, who taught me to speak to myself this way? That question can be painful, but it can also be freeing. You may realize that your harsh inner voice sounds like someone from your past. You may realize that your fear of being too much came from people who had no room for your emotions. You may realize that your obsession with achievement came from environments where rest was treated like laziness. You may realize that your shame about needing love came from people who made you feel needy for wanting basic care. And suddenly, the belief, "I am not enough," begins to lose some of its authority. It becomes less like truth and more like inherited pain. Buddhism teaches impermanence, and this matters deeply when dealing with old beliefs. The mind says, "This is who I am." Awareness says, "This is a condition that has been repeated." The mind says, "I will always feel this way." Awareness says, "This feeling has arisen, and what arises can pass." The mind says, "My past proves my worth." Awareness says, "The past shaped my experience, but it is not the whole of reality." Impermanence does not erase what happened, but it stops the past from pretending to be eternal. When you sit in meditation, you begin to see how thoughts come and go. A memory appears, then fades. A fear appears, then shifts. A sensation rises, then changes. A story pulls you in, then loses strength when observed. This is not just a calming exercise, it is training in truth. You learn that the mind is not a solid wall, it is more like weather passing through the sky. Some weather is heavy, some weather is frightening, some weather returns often, but the sky is not destroyed by the clouds. The thought, "I am not enough," may be a dark cloud that has returned many times, but it is still not the sky. It is still not the full truth of your being. It is a mental formation shaped by conditions. This does not mean you should hate it. It means you should stop worshipping it. You can bow to the pain behind it without believing the lie inside it. You can say, "I see that this thought is here. I see that it has history. I see that it hurts, but I do not have to build my identity around it." This is the difference between being caught in memory and being aware of memory. When you are caught in memory, the past feels like the present. You react as if the same danger is happening again. You defend, please, hide, freeze, chase, over-explain, or collapse. But when you are aware of memory, you can feel the old pain and still remain connected to now. You can say, "This moment reminds me of something, but it is not the same moment. This person is not every person who hurt me. This silence is not always abandonment. This mistake is not the end of my worth." That kind of awareness takes practice because old conditioning does not disappear just because you understand it once. The mind has habits. If a path has been walked for years, the grass is flat there. The brain returns to what is familiar. So when something happens, your old belief may activate quickly. Before you can think clearly, the body may already feel the old fear. This is not failure, it is conditioning. And conditioning can be softened through repeated awareness. Each time the old belief appears and you do not immediately believe it, the pattern weakens a little. Each time shame says, "This proves you are not enough," and you answer, "This is an old story," the chain loosens. Each time the body panics and you return to the breath, you teach it a new response. Each time you separate fact from memory, the present becomes clearer. This is slow work, but it is real work. One practical Buddhist way to do this is to name what is happening. When the feeling of not enough rises, do not rush to fight it. Say gently, "A memory is being touched," or "Old shame is arising," or "The mind is telling an old story." These simple words create distance. They remind you that you are not inside absolute truth. You are watching a conditioned reaction. This distance is not cold. It is compassionate. It gives you room to respond wisely. Then ask, what are the facts of this moment? Not the fears, not the old meanings, the facts. Someone did not reply yet. That is a fact. They hate me is a story. You made a mistake. That is a fact. I am useless is a story. Someone chose a different path. That is a fact. I am not wanted anywhere is a story. You are struggling today. That is a fact. I will never heal is a story. This practice may sound simple, but for a wounded mind, it is powerful. It brings you back from the haunted house of memory into the room of reality. Another part of the practice is learning to feel the emotion without accepting the identity. You can feel shame without becoming shame. You can feel rejection without becoming rejected as a person. You can feel loneliness without deciding you are unlovable. You can feel fear without deciding danger is everywhere. This is emotional maturity in Buddhist practice, allowing the experience to pass through without turning it into self. The ego wants to make everything about identity. If something good happens, it says, "I am special." If something painful happens, it says, "I am worthless." But Buddhism invites you into a wider view. Experiences arise because of many causes and conditions. Not everything is a statement about who you are. Someone's inability to love you well may be about their wounds. Someone's criticism may be about their perception. A failure may be about timing, preparation, support, or circumstance. A rejection may be about mismatch, fear, preference, or life direction. But the wounded mind says, "No, it is all because I am not enough." Awareness says, "Let me look more deeply." Looking more deeply does not mean avoiding responsibility. If you harmed someone, you take responsibility. If you made a poor choice, you learn. If a pattern is hurting your life, you work with it. But responsibility is different from turning everything into proof of personal defect. You can be responsible without being condemned. You can learn without becoming the mistake. You can repair without wearing shame as your name. This is where Buddhist compassion becomes essential. When an old memory rises, the first instinct may be to judge yourself for still being affected. You may say, "Why am I still hurt by this? Why am I still insecure? Why can't I just move on?" But this adds suffering. Pain does not heal faster because you insult it. A wound does not close because you are embarrassed by it. The heart heals when it is met with patience, honesty, and care. Sometimes you must speak to the wounded part of you as you would speak to someone you love. Not with pity, but with understanding. Of course this hurts. Of course this feels familiar. Of course you are scared. You learned this long ago, but we are here now. We are not back there. We can breathe. We can see clearly. We do not have to live from that old belief anymore. These words may feel simple, but they begin to build inner safety. Inner safety is important because the nervous system does not release old beliefs just because the mind says that is not true. You may know intellectually that you are enough, but still feel unworthy in the body. That does not mean you are failing. It means healing must reach deeper than thought. You must give the body repeated experiences of safety, truth, boundaries, and self-respect. You must show yourself through action that the past is no longer in control. For example, if your old belief says, "I must please people to be loved," healing is not only saying, "I am enough." Healing is also practicing a small, honest no and surviving the discomfort. If your old belief says, "Mistakes make me worthless," healing is making a mistake, correcting it, and refusing to destroy yourself. If your old belief says, "My needs are too much," healing is expressing one need to a safe person and allowing yourself to receive care. If your old belief says, "I must be chosen to matter," healing is staying with yourself when someone does not choose you. This is how the past loses power, not by being erased, but by being contradicted through mindful living. Every new conscious action becomes evidence for the heart. It says, "Maybe I can be honest and still be safe. Maybe I can fail and still be worthy. Maybe I can be unseen by one person and still exist fully. Maybe I can feel pain without becoming the old story." Buddhist awareness also teaches you to see that memory is not always complete. The mind often remembers pain in sharp pieces. It remembers the look, the words, the rejection, the embarrassment, the silence. But it may not remember the full truth of your innocence, your age, your limited choices, your fear, your need for guidance, or the conditions around the people who hurt you. Memory can become narrow. It can hold the wound and forget the context. Awareness widens the lens. When you widen the lens, you may begin to see your younger self differently. Instead of judging that version of you, you may feel tenderness. You may see someone who was trying to be loved, someone who did not yet know how to protect their boundaries, someone who believed what others said because they had not yet learned to question it, someone who carried shame that did not belong to them, someone who turned pain inward because turning it outward felt unsafe. This tenderness is not weakness. It is the beginning of reclaiming yourself from old interpretations. You cannot change what happened, but you can change the meaning you keep giving it. This is very powerful. A past rejection may have meant, "I am unlovable," for many years, but with awareness, it can begin to mean, "That was a painful experience that revealed someone's limits, my unmet needs, and the places in me that needed care." A past failure may have meant, "I am not capable." Now it can mean, "I was learning under conditions I did not fully understand." A past humiliation may have meant, "I should hide." Now it can mean, "I survived being seen in pain, and I do not have to live in hiding forever." This change of meaning is not lying to yourself. It is seeing more truth than the wound allowed you to see before. The wounded mind creates simple, harsh meanings because it wants to protect you quickly. Buddhist awareness creates deeper meanings because it is willing to look patiently. It understands that life is complex, that people act from ignorance, that suffering creates suffering, and that no single event can define the whole value of a being. There is another Buddhist insight that helps here: dependent origination. Things arise because other things are present. Your feeling of not enough did not arise by itself. It depended on experiences, repeated messages, emotional needs, fear, comparison, family patterns, social pressure, and your own interpretations. Seeing this helps you stop personalizing everything. The belief was produced, and because it was produced, it can be understood. Because it can be understood, it can be loosened. Because it can be loosened, it does not have to control your future. This insight brings humility too. Just as your wounds were shaped by causes, other people's behavior was also shaped by causes. This does not mean harmful actions are acceptable. It means you no longer need to make every wound a final statement about your worth. Someone may have rejected you because they were afraid of depth. Someone may have criticized you because they were taught cruelty. Someone may have neglected you because they lacked emotional maturity. Someone may have compared you because they were trapped in comparison themselves. Their behavior affected you, yes, but it did not reveal the ultimate truth of you. When this begins to settle, you stop asking the past for permission to be free. You stop returning to old scenes, hoping they will finally explain your worth correctly. You stop trying to win in your mind against people who may never understand what they planted in you. You stop living as though your life must answer every wound. Instead, you begin living from awareness. This happened, it shaped me, it hurt me, but it is not all of me. That sentence is a doorway. It is not all of me. Your pain is part of your story, but it is not your whole being. Your rejection is part of your story, but it is not your essence. Your mistake is part of your story, but it is not your name. Your insecurity is part of your experience, but it is not your final truth. The mind may still return to old beliefs, but now you can meet them differently. You can say, I know where you came from. I know why you sound convincing, but I am learning to see beyond you. This is not instant. There may be times when the old belief wins for a while. A difficult day may make you feel small again. A rejection may reopen the familiar ache. A comparison may pull you back into the old measurement. But Buddhist practice is not about never falling into old conditioning. It is about waking up sooner. Maybe before you lived inside the story for months, then weeks, then days, then hours. Then one day you notice it as it arises. That is progress. Quiet, powerful progress. And each time you wake up, be gentle. Do not use awareness as another weapon. Do not say, I should know better by now. Say, I am seeing it now. That is enough. Seeing is the beginning of freedom. You cannot force the lotus to open by pulling its petals. You create the conditions, and slowly it opens. In the same way, you create the conditions of mindfulness, compassion, honesty, and right action, and the old belief begins to lose its grip. The feeling of not enough may still visit you, but it no longer has to own the house. It may knock on the door, but you do not have to serve it tea and let it redesign your whole life. You can recognize it as a visitor from the past. You can listen for what pain it carries. You can comfort the part of you it awakens. Then you can return to what is real. This breath, this body, this moment, this chance to choose differently. And here is the beautiful thing. When you stop confusing memory with truth, you begin to meet life more directly. You are no longer always looking through old glass. People become people, not symbols of everyone who hurt you. Mistakes become lessons, not proof of defect. Silence becomes silence, not automatic abandonment. Slow progress becomes part of the path, not evidence of failure. Your own heart becomes a place to understand, not a courtroom where old memories keep testifying against you. This is the healing Buddhist awareness offers. It does not deny the past. It does not tell you to forget. It does not rush you into false positivity. It simply teaches you to see clearly enough that the past no longer wears the mask of ultimate truth. You learn to bow to what happened without kneeling forever before the beliefs it created. You learn to honor your pain without letting it write your identity. You learn to carry memory as memory, not as a sentence. So when the voice says, "You are not enough," pause. Do not rush to obey it. Do not rush to fight it. Look at it gently and ask, how old is this voice? Who does it sound like? What moment does it carry? What is happening right now? What is true in this breath? These questions are lamps. They bring light to the place where memory has been pretending to be reality. And as you practice, you may begin to feel something inside you loosen. Not all at once, but slowly. You may begin to realize that you have been living under conclusions made during pain. You may begin to forgive yourself for believing them. You may begin to see that your worth was never destroyed by the moments that made you doubt it. It was only covered by fear, covered by conditioning, covered by old interpretations, covered by the dust of other people's blindness. Buddhist healing is the patient clearing of that dust, not to create worth, but to reveal what was never truly absent. You are not trying to become enough. You are learning to stop believing every memory that says you are not. And once this becomes clear, another layer of suffering becomes visible, the way the mind compares your wounded path to someone else's visible life, as if every soul has carried the same causes, the same burdens, the same karma, and the same timing. That is where the next lesson begins, with the quiet violence of comparing your path to another person's karma. And once you begin to see that the feeling of not being enough is often an old memory, not the truth, you start noticing another habit that keeps the wound alive. The mind does not only look backward into the past, it also looks sideways at other people's lives. It compares your healing to their peace, your timing to their success, your pain to their confidence, your struggle to their smile, your hidden battles to their visible blessings. And before you know it, the old belief returns again, dressed in a new voice. Look at them. Why are you not there yet? There is a kind of violence in comparison that most people do not recognize because it does not leave marks on the skin. It leaves marks on the spirit. It steals your breath quietly. It turns someone else's joy into your private punishment. It makes another person's progress feel like evidence against your own life. It makes you look at your path, not with patience, but with accusation. And the painful part is that comparison often feels like truth while it is hurting you. You call it motivation. You call it being realistic. You call it measuring your life. But many times, it is only the wounded mind using someone else's journey as a weapon against your own heart. Buddhist wisdom teaches that no life unfolds alone. Every person's life is shaped by causes, conditions, choices, timing, support, wounds, lessons, family history, environment, health, opportunities, losses, fears, privileges, burdens, and karma. What you see on the outside is never the whole story. You see the fruit, but not the soil. You see the smile, but not the nights they survived. You see the success, but not the hidden price. You see the relationship, but not the private struggles inside it. You see the calm, but not the years of practice that trained it. You see one shining moment and compare it to your whole unfinished journey. That is not fair to you. It is not even fair to them. Comparison damages peace because it removes context. It takes one piece of another person's life and places it beside one painful piece of yours, then asks you why you are behind. It does not compare your full story to their full story. It compares your wound to their appearance, your beginning to their middle, your private fear to their public confidence, your slow season to their harvest. And because the comparison is incomplete, the judgment it creates is false. Think about how often this happens. You see someone your age doing better financially, and suddenly your own efforts feel small. You see someone in a loving relationship, and suddenly your loneliness feels like failure. You see someone with a peaceful family, and suddenly your wounds feel embarrassing. You see someone who seems spiritually calm, and suddenly your own anxiety feels like proof that you are not growing. You see someone praised, chosen, promoted, admired, celebrated, and something inside you tightens. Not because you hate them, but because their blessing touches the part of you that still doubts your own. This is where comparison becomes dangerous. It does not always create hatred toward others. Sometimes it creates hatred toward yourself. You may even smile for the person. You may even say congratulations, but inside, you shrink. Their progress becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, you only see what you lack. You forget everything you have survived. You forget the battles they never had to fight. You forget the burdens you carried quietly. You forget that your path has its own causes and timing. You forget that you are not here to copy another person's karma. In Buddhism, karma is often misunderstood. Many people think karma is simply reward and punishment, as if life is a simple machine giving good things to good people and bad things to bad people. But karma is deeper than that. It is about action, intention, cause, effect, and the way conditions unfold. Your present life is shaped by countless causes, some you chose, some you inherited, some you were thrown into, some you did not understand at the time, and some you are only now becoming aware of. Another person's life is shaped by their own web of causes. So when you compare your path to theirs, you are comparing two completely different streams and asking why the water does not move the same way. A river flowing through rocks does not move like a river flowing through open land. A seed planted in shade does not grow like a seed planted in full sun. A person raised with encouragement may move through life differently from a person raised with fear. A person who was supported may take risks more easily than a person who had to survive alone. A person whose nervous system learned safety early may trust love differently from a person whose nervous system learned abandonment. A person whose pain was understood may speak freely, while another person may need years just to find their voice. So when you ask, "Why am I not like them?" you may be ignoring the conditions that shaped you. You may be judging yourself for not blooming in soil that was never gentle. You may be blaming your heart for moving slowly when it spent years protecting itself. You may be accusing your life of failure when, in truth, your life has been carrying weights that others cannot see. This does not mean you should use your past as an excuse to never grow. Buddhism does not teach helplessness. It teaches clear seeing. Clear seeing means you recognize your causes without becoming trapped by them. You say, "This shaped me," not "This must define me forever." You say, "My path has been different," not "I can never change." But you also stop punishing yourself for not having the same timing as someone whose conditions were not the same as yours. Comparison often comes from impatience with your own unfolding. You want the flower before the roots are ready. You want peace before the wound has been understood. You want confidence before safety has been built. You want success before your inner foundation is steady. You want love before you have stopped abandoning yourself. You want the fruit because you see fruit on someone else's tree. But Buddhism asks you to respect the whole process, not only the visible result. A tree does not grow by looking at another tree and feeling ashamed. It grows by receiving what it needs, releasing what blocks it, and staying rooted in its own nature. Human beings suffer because the mind is always looking away from its own roots. Instead of asking, "What does my life need now?" we ask, "Why does their life look better?" Instead of asking, "What lesson is my path teaching me?" we ask, "Why did they arrive before me?" Instead of asking, "What cause can I plant today?" we ask, "Why am I not already harvesting?" This is how comparison steals the present. It pulls you out of the only place where change is possible. You cannot live in someone else's timing. You cannot heal through someone else's body. You cannot borrow another person's karma. You cannot enter another person's life and take their exact causes. You can only return to your own breath, your own choices, your own awareness, your own next right step. That may sound small, but it is where power lives. The mind that compares is rarely at peace because it keeps creating imaginary races. Who is ahead? Who is behind? Who is more loved? Who is more beautiful? Who is more successful? Who is more wise? Who is more healed? Who has more attention? Who has more respect? But life is not a straight road with everyone starting at the same point and running toward the same finish line. Life is more like a forest with different paths, different weather, different obstacles, different seasons, and different lessons. Some paths are steep early and easier later. Some look beautiful from afar but are lonely inside. Some begin slowly and become strong with time. Some people arrive early at success and late at peace. Some arrive late at success and early at wisdom. You do not know the whole map of another person's life. You only see the part that is visible from where you stand. And the mind fills in the gaps with fantasy. It assumes they are happier. It assumes they are safer. It assumes they are more loved. It assumes their success feels as good on the inside as it looks from the outside. But you do not know what their heart carries. You do not know what keeps them awake. You do not know what they had to sacrifice. You do not know what fear hides behind their confidence. You do not know what karma is still unfolding behind the scenes. This is why Buddhist compassion is an antidote to comparison. When you see another person's life with compassion, you stop turning them into a symbol of your failure. You remember they are also human. They also suffer. They also fear loss. They also age. They also face uncertainty. They also carry causes and conditions you may never see. Their joy is not an insult to you. Their progress is not an attack. Their beauty is not your rejection. Their achievement is not your shame. Their timing is not your deadline. This shift matters because comparison often turns other people into enemies without reason. Someone else's blessing becomes painful to witness. Someone else's growth becomes difficult to celebrate. Someone else's confidence becomes irritating. But beneath that irritation is often grief. You are not angry because they have something good. You are hurting because their good thing touches the place where you feel deprived. When you understand this, jealousy can become a teacher instead of a poison. Jealousy is not always evil. It is a signal. It may show you what you long for. It may show you where you feel empty. It may show you a desire you have judged or buried. It may show you a wound that needs care. If you look at jealousy with awareness, you can ask, what is this feeling pointing to? Maybe it points to your desire for love. Maybe it points to your need for rest. Maybe it points to a dream you abandoned. Maybe it points to your hunger for recognition. Maybe it points to the pain of feeling unseen. But if you look at jealousy without awareness, it becomes bitterness. It makes you resent people for having what your heart has not yet learned how to seek wisely. Buddhist practice does not ask you to pretend you never compare. That would be dishonest. The mind compares quickly. It has been trained by family, school, culture, money, beauty standards, social media, religion, achievement systems, and human insecurity. From a young age, many people are ranked, graded, praised, compared, corrected, and measured. So comparison becomes automatic. But automatic does not mean permanent. When comparison arises, you can notice it without obeying it. You can say, comparison is here. Not, I am a terrible person. Not, I must be behind. Just, comparison is here. Then breathe. Feel the body. Notice the contraction. Notice the story. Notice the pain. Then ask, what am I forgetting about my own path right now? This question brings you back. Maybe you are forgetting how much you have survived. Maybe you are forgetting that you started with fewer tools. Maybe you are forgetting that your current season is for building roots, not showing fruit. Maybe you are forgetting that the person you envy also has suffering you cannot see. Maybe you are forgetting that your worth is not decided by speed. Speed is one of the great illusions of modern life. People want quick healing, quick success, quick clarity, quick love, quick transformation, quick results. But some of the deepest things in life refuse to be rushed. Trust takes time. Self-worth takes practice. Wisdom grows through seasons. A stable mind is trained through repetition. A healed heart opens slowly. A meaningful life is not built only through sudden breakthroughs, but through quiet, consistent choices that nobody may applaud. Comparison hates this because comparison loves visible proof. It wants something to show. It wants evidence that you are not wasting time. It wants to say, "Look, I am becoming someone." But Buddhist growth is often invisible before it is visible. You may be learning not to react. You may be learning to pause. You may be learning to speak kindly to yourself. You may be learning to stop chasing people. You may be learning to rest without guilt. You may be learning to feel your emotions without becoming them. These changes may not impress the world, but they change the quality of your life. There are people who look ahead of you externally but are still trapped internally. There are people with money who have no peace. There are people with relationships who feel unknown. There are people with beauty who feel terrified of aging. There are people with followers who feel deeply lonely. There are people with status who cannot sleep without fear of losing it. There are people praised by thousands who cannot sit quietly with themselves. So be careful what you envy. You may be envying the decoration of a house you have never entered. This does not mean dismissing other people's blessings. It means seeing more deeply. You can admire without comparing. You can be inspired without self-attack. You can celebrate without shrinking. Inspiration says, "That shows what is possible." Comparison says, "That proves I am failing." Inspiration opens the heart. Comparison closes it. Inspiration gives energy. Comparison drains it. Inspiration respects your path. Comparison abandons it. The difference is subtle, but you can feel it in the body. Inspiration feels spacious. Comparison feels tight. So when you see someone doing well, practice turning comparison into blessing. This is a powerful Buddhist practice. Instead of saying, "Why not me?" try saying, "May their joy continue. May I also plant good causes in my own life." At first, your ego may resist. It may say, "But I feel left behind." Be honest about that too. You can say, "I feel pain, and still I choose not to turn their happiness into my suffering." This is not fake positivity. It is training the heart out of scarcity. There is a beautiful practice in Buddhism called sympathetic joy, the ability to rejoice in the happiness and good fortune of others. This is not always easy, especially when you are hurting, but it is deeply healing because it breaks the illusion that another person's joy reduces your own chances. The jealous mind believes joy is limited. The awakened heart learns that joy can be shared, honored, and allowed. When you celebrate another person without abandoning yourself, you become freer. But to practice sympathetic joy, you must also practice compassion toward yourself. Do not force yourself to celebrate others while secretly beating yourself down. That is not healing. If someone's blessing hurts to witness, admit the hurt gently. Say, "There is longing here, there is sadness here, there is comparison here." Then hold your own heart. After that, offer goodwill if you can. This way, you do not use spirituality to suppress pain. You use awareness to transform it. Comparison also damages peace by making your life feel like it is always missing something. No matter what you have, the mind finds someone with more. More success, more love, more beauty, more calm, more money, more talent, more confidence, more recognition. If you follow this mind, gratitude becomes impossible. You may be standing inside blessings you once prayed for, yet unable to enjoy them because someone else appears to have a bigger blessing. This is a painful form of blindness. Buddhist practice brings you back to sufficiency. It asks you to notice what is here, this breath, this body, this chance, this lesson, this small progress, this person who cares, this meal, this roof, this moment of clarity. this day that has not been promised forever. Gratitude is not denial of desire. It is the refusal to let desire erase what is already sacred. You can want growth and still honor what is present. You can dream and still breathe. You can move forward and still bow to now. The mind of comparison is always saying, not yet, not enough, not like them. The mind of awareness says, this is my path today. What is the wise step? That one question can save you from years of suffering. What is the wise step? Not the impressive step, not the step that makes you look successful, not the step that proves something to people watching. The wise step. Maybe the wise step is rest. Maybe it is discipline. Maybe it is study. Maybe it is forgiveness. Maybe it is leaving a comparison-filled environment. Maybe it is reducing time on social media. Maybe it is speaking to yourself with more care. Maybe it is doing the small work in front of you instead of staring at another person's harvest. Your path becomes peaceful when you stop demanding that it look like someone else's path. Some people are given certain lessons early. Others learn them later. Some people learn independence before love. Some learn love before independence. Some learn success before humility. Some learn humility before success. Some learn loss early and compassion grows from it. Some learn comfort early and resilience later. Some are delayed because they are being deepened. Some are hidden because they are being rooted. Some are slowed down because the life they want requires a stronger inner foundation than they first understood. This is not always easy to accept. When you are in a slow season, it can feel like punishment. You may wonder why doors open for others and not for you. You may wonder why healing seems easier for someone else. You may wonder why your life carries so many detours. But from a Buddhist view, the question is not only, why is this happening to me? The deeper question is, what can this teach? What cause can I plant now? What suffering can become wisdom instead of bitterness? The answer may not come immediately. Some lessons are only understood later. But comparison blocks the lesson because it keeps your eyes on another person's paper. It is like sitting in a classroom, refusing to answer your own questions because you are angry that someone else got different ones. But your life is not asking you to solve their karma. It is asking you to awaken through your own. Your disappointments, your delays, your longings, your mistakes, your strengths, your sensitivities, your relationships, your losses, your gifts, your timing. This is your material. This is your path of practice. There is dignity in accepting your own material, not resignation, but dignity. You stop saying, my life should be like theirs, and begin saying, this is the life in front of me. How do I meet it with awareness? That sentence brings power back, because while you may not control every condition, you can choose the quality of your attention. You can choose the seeds you plant. You can choose whether comparison becomes poison or information. You can choose whether another person's success becomes self-hatred or inspiration. You can choose whether your slow season becomes shame or training. Buddhism teaches that every action plants seeds. Every thought you repeat plants seeds. Every comparison you feed plants seeds. If you keep watering resentment, resentment grows. If you keep watering gratitude, gratitude grows. If you keep watering patience, patience grows. If you keep watering self-attack, self-attack grows. So ask yourself, when you compare, what seed are you watering? Are you watering wisdom or bitterness? Courage or despair? Discipline or self-hatred? Compassion or envy? The mind becomes the garden you keep tending. This does not mean you must never notice differences. Life has real differences. Some people have more support, more resources, more beauty according to social standards, more money, more opportunities, more confidence, more visible success. Denying this would be dishonest. Buddhism does not require blindness, it requires right understanding. Yes, differences exist, but difference is not a verdict. Difference is not destiny. Difference is not proof that your life has no value. Difference is part of the world of conditions. When you understand conditions, you stop turning everything into personal failure. If someone had more guidance, their confidence may make sense. If someone had more money, their opportunities may make sense. If someone had more emotional safety, their openness may make sense. If someone had fewer burdens, their speed may make sense. And if you had more pain, more confusion, more responsibility, more fear, or less support, your slower unfolding may also make sense. This is not excuse-making. This is truth with context. Context is mercy. Shame removes context. It says, you should be like them. Awareness restores context. It says, your life has different causes. What can you do now? This is how you become both compassionate and responsible. You do not deny your burdens, and you do not worship them. You see them clearly, then plant new causes where you can. This is where your self-worth becomes more stable. If your worth depends on being ahead, you will always be afraid. Someone will always be ahead in some area. If your worth depends on being admired, someone else will always be more admired somewhere. If your worth depends on being chosen first, there will always be rooms where you are not chosen. But if your worth rests in awareness, compassion, and the sacred fact of being alive, then comparison loses its throne. You may still feel it, but it does not rule you. A powerful practice is to bless your own path every morning before the world teaches you to compare. Before checking what others are doing, return to your own breath. Say, may I walk my path with wisdom. May I honor my timing. May I plant good causes today. May I not use another person's life to harm my own heart. This is simple, but it prepares the mind. It reminds you that your first relationship each day is with your own awareness, not with the noise of the world. Another practice is to limit what feeds comparison. Some environments are not neutral. They are designed to trigger lack. They show you beauty so you feel unattractive, wealth so you feel behind, romance so you feel unwanted, success so you feel ordinary, luxury so you feel poor, perfection so you feel flawed. You must be wise about what you consume. If something repeatedly makes you hate your life, do not call it harmless. Guarding the mind is not weakness. It is spiritual hygiene. The Buddha spoke often about guarding the senses because what enters the mind shapes the mind. What you keep looking at, listening to, and entertaining becomes part of your inner weather. If you constantly expose yourself to comparison, do not be surprised when your heart feels restless. This does not mean hiding from the world. It means choosing what supports clarity rather than craving. Peace is not only built by meditation, it is also built by what you stop feeding. You may also need to redefine success in a way that respects your karma. For one person, success may be building a company. For another, it may be learning to sleep without fear. For one person, success may be marriage. For another, it may be leaving a relationship where they kept disappearing. For one person, success may be public recognition. For another, it may be finally speaking kindly to themselves after years of inner cruelty. Do not let the world give you only one ruler to measure a life that contains many forms of courage. There are victories in your life that comparison will never recognize. The day you did not return to an old habit. The day you chose silence instead of over-explaining. The day you rested without calling yourself lazy. The day you felt jealousy and chose not to become bitter. The day you apologized honestly. The day you stopped begging someone to see you. The day you faced a memory without letting it define you. These are not small. These are seeds of liberation. Comparison laughs at quiet victories because it only respects what can be displayed. But Buddhism respects what reduces suffering. If an action brings more awareness, compassion, freedom, and truth, it matters, even if nobody sees it, even if it does not look impressive, even if it cannot be posted, praised, or measured. Some of the most sacred progress in life happens where no one claps. When you understand this, you begin to become loyal to your own path. Loyalty to your path does not mean you never learn from others. It means you do not abandon yourself while looking at them. You can study someone's discipline without hating your own beginning. You can admire someone's peace without shaming your anxiety. You can learn from someone's success without turning their timeline into your prison. You can be inspired by their light while still tending your own flame. And if you feel behind, remember this: being behind, according to whom? According to what clock? According to what map? Society has invented many timelines, but life does not always obey them. Married by this age, successful by that age, healed by this season, wealthy by that year, calm by now, certain by now, established by now. But Buddhism asks you to look at reality, not imagination. Reality says life unfolds through causes and conditions, not through social deadlines. A person can arrive on time by society's standards and still be lost inside. Another can arrive late and carry deep wisdom. Late does not mean wasted. Slow does not mean failed. Hidden does not mean forgotten. Different does not mean wrong. Your path may not be following the crowd because your lessons are not the crowd's lessons. Your heart may need a different rhythm. Your healing may require a different pace. Your life may be teaching you depth before visibility, patience before arrival, humility before recognition, self-trust before relationship, inner peace before outer expansion. There is peace in letting your path be yours, not as a slogan, but as practice. You breathe and come back. You notice comparison and come back. You see someone else shine and come back. You feel the ache of longing and come back. You bless them if you can, comfort yourself if you need to, and then return to the seed in your own hand, because that is where your karma is being shaped, not in their life, in yours. The quiet violence of comparison begins to end when you stop using another person's destiny as evidence against your own. You stop assuming that their timing is the correct timing. You stop treating their blessings as your measurements. You stop believing that every visible success is proof of inner freedom. You stop calling yourself behind simply because your path is carrying different lessons. You begin to understand that every being is unfolding through a web of causes you cannot fully see. And as this understanding deepens, your heart becomes less harsh. You can look at others with goodwill and look at yourself with patience. You can honor their harvest and still care for your soil. You can accept your slow places without shame. You can continue growing without turning life into a race. You can finally whisper to yourself, "My path is not wrong because it does not look like theirs." That sentence is a kind of medicine, because once you stop comparing your path to another person's karma, you are left with the simple truth of your own existence, not ranked, not measured, not placed above or below, just here, breathing, learning, becoming. And this opens the next wound that must be healed. The constant inner argument against being who you are, where you are, as you are. Because after comparison quiets down, the next practice is learning to stop fighting your own existence and finally allow yourself to be here. And when the noise of comparison begins to quiet, when you stop measuring your path against another person's karma, something even more personal rises to the surface. You are left alone with your own life, your own breath, your own body, your own history, your own pace, your own unfinished heart. And this is where many people discover that the deepest battle was never only with the world, it was with their own existence. The constant feeling that they should be different by now, somewhere else by now, stronger by now, healed by now, more beautiful by now, more successful by now, more lovable by now. And without noticing it, they have been living as if being themselves is a problem that must be solved before peace is allowed. There is a silent war many people wake up to every morning. It begins before they even speak. The eyes open and the mind starts arguing. Why am I still like this? Why is my life not better? Why do I feel this way? Why can't I be more disciplined? Why can't I be calm like other people? Why do I still care? Why do I still hurt? Why am I not enough? These questions may sound like reflection, but often they are not asked with kindness. They are asked like accusations. They do not open the heart. They corner it. And day after day, the person becomes both the judge and the prisoner inside their own mind. Self-rejection is exhausting because it turns your very existence into a debate. You are not simply living, you are constantly defending why you deserve to be here. You are not simply feeling, you are arguing with every emotion that does not match the version of you that you think should exist. If sadness comes, you say, I should be over this. If fear comes, you say, I should be stronger. If tiredness comes, you say, I should be doing more. If loneliness comes, you say, I should not need anyone. If confusion comes, you say, I should have my life figured out. The feeling itself is already difficult, but the rejection of the feeling makes it heavier. Buddhism teaches that suffering does not only come from pain, it also comes from resistance to pain. Life brings discomfort, the body changes, emotions rise, plans fail, people disappoint, the mind becomes restless, old wounds return. These things are part of being human. But when the mind says, this should not be happening, a second suffering is born. The first suffering is what is here. The second suffering is the fight against what is here. And many people are not only hurting from life, they are hurting from the war they are waging against the fact that life is happening this way. Acceptance begins when you stop adding war to your wound. But acceptance is often misunderstood. Some people hear acceptance and think it means giving up. They think it means saying, everything is fine, when everything is not fine. They think it means allowing people to mistreat you, staying stuck, losing ambition, becoming passive, or pretending pain does not matter. That is not Buddhist acceptance. True acceptance is not surrendering your dignity. It is surrendering the illusion that you can heal by hating reality. It is the honest recognition that this moment is already here, and fighting its existence only deepens suffering. Acceptance says, this is what I feel right now. It does not say, this is all I will ever feel. Acceptance says, this is where I am today. It does not say, I must stay here forever. Acceptance says, this wound exists. It does not say, this wound defines me. Acceptance says, I see the truth of this moment clearly. It does not say, I approve of everything that caused it. This difference matters because many people reject acceptance because they confuse it with defeat. But acceptance is not defeat. It is the ground from which wise action becomes possible. You cannot take the next true step if you refuse to stand where you are. You cannot heal a wound you keep denying. You cannot change a pattern you keep pretending is not present. You cannot calm a mind you keep attacking for being restless. You cannot care for a body you keep insulting for being human. You cannot build a peaceful life while treating your current life as an enemy. Buddhist acceptance begins by saying, let me stop arguing with the fact that this is where the path begins. There is a strange cruelty in always wishing yourself away. I wish I had a different body. I wish I had a different past. I wish I had a different personality. I wish I did not feel so deeply. I wish I were more confident. I wish I were less sensitive. I wish I were someone else. These thoughts may come quietly, but they cut deeply. Over time, the heart receives the message, I am not welcome here. And when your own heart feels unwelcome inside your own life, no amount of outside comfort can fully settle you. This is why learning to stop arguing with your existence is not a small lesson. It is one of the roots of self-worth. Before you can feel enough, you must stop treating your being as something offensive. Before you can love yourself deeply, you must allow yourself to exist without constant apology. Before you can grow peacefully, you must stop standing over your own life with a whip. You must begin to say, I am here. This is the life I have. This is the body breathing. This is the mind learning. This is the heart healing. I may not be where I want to be, but I do not have to hate myself for being where I am. This kind of statement can feel almost rebellious if you have spent years rejecting yourself. The mind may protest. It may say, but if I accept myself, I will become lazy. If I stop criticizing myself, I will lose control. If I stop being hard on myself, I will never improve. But look carefully. Has years of self-attack truly given you peace? Has inner cruelty made you whole? Has constant rejection helped you become deeply free? Maybe it pushed you to achieve some things. Maybe it forced you to survive. Maybe it made you appear disciplined. But did it teach you how to rest inside your own being? Did it teach you how to feel safe with yourself? Did it teach you how to live without fear? There is a better way to grow. Buddhism calls it right effort. Right effort is not harsh force. It is not the frantic energy of self-hatred. It is the wise energy that prevents harmful states, releases harmful states, cultivates wholesome states, and protects wholesome states. This kind of effort requires awareness. It asks, what helps reduce suffering? Not, how can I punish myself into becoming acceptable? Right effort can be firm, but it is not cruel. It can be disciplined, but it is not hateful. It can correct, but it does not condemn. When you stop arguing with your existence, you are not saying, I have no work to do. You are saying, I will do the work without turning myself into the enemy. That is a mature kind of acceptance. It gives you enough kindness to stay present and enough honesty to change what needs changing. It allows you to look at your life clearly because shame is no longer fogging the mirror. You can say, this habit is hurting me, without adding, so I am worthless. You can say, I need to grow, without adding, so I am unacceptable. You can say, this is painful, without adding, so my life is a failure. Self-rejection often disguises itself as high standards. It says, I just expect more from myself. But high standards without compassion become inner violence. They make life feel like a courtroom where you are always guilty. Every delay becomes evidence. Every emotion becomes evidence. Every mistake becomes evidence. Every weakness becomes evidence. The mind builds a case against you and calls it motivation. But a person cannot live peacefully while constantly being prosecuted by their own thoughts. Buddhist awareness interrupts the trial. It does not argue with every accusation. It simply notices judgment is arising. It notices the tone of the mind. It notices the body tightening under criticism. It notices the old habit of turning everything into a verdict. Then it returns to the breath. This return is powerful because it refuses to continue the inner courtroom. It says, I do not have to sentence myself today. I can observe, I can learn, I can respond. The breath is important here because the breath does not argue with your existence. It enters and leaves. It does not ask whether you are successful enough to breathe. It does not wait for you to become perfect. It does not say, you may receive air only when you have proven your worth. The breath is a quiet teacher. Each inhale says, you are here. Each exhale says, let go. When you return to the breath, you return to a truth deeper than the mind's accusations. Life is already allowing you to be here. That may sound simple, but let it reach you. Life is already allowing you to be here. The sun does not ask for your achievements before it shines on your face. The earth does not ask for your status before it holds your feet. The air does not ask for your beauty before it enters your lungs. Existence itself is not debating your worth. Only the conditioned mind is doing that. And when you see this, even for a moment, the argument begins to weaken. You may have learned to believe that acceptance must come from people, but there is a deeper acceptance that begins before human approval. It is the acceptance of reality itself. You are here. You are part of this moment. You belong to the field of life, not because you have performed enough, but because you are alive. Buddhism does not frame this as egoic specialness. It is not saying, I am better than others. It is saying, I am not separate from life. The same impermanence, breath, suffering, longing, and awareness moving through others also moves through you. You are not an error in the universe. Self-rejection makes you feel like an exception. It says, other people can be human, but not me. Other people can struggle, but not me. Other people can need time, but not me. Other people can make mistakes and still be worthy, but not me. This is a hidden arrogance of shame. It places you outside the human condition, as if you alone must be perfect before compassion applies. Buddhist humility brings you back. It says, I too am human. I too am learning. I too am touched by causes and conditions. I too deserve the patience that all suffering beings need. This humility softens the inner battle. You stop demanding that you should have escaped all human weakness by now. You stop acting surprised that you still feel pain. You stop treating emotional struggle as personal failure. You begin to understand that being alive includes uncertainty, tenderness, confusion, desire, loss, and change. The goal is not to become a stone that feels nothing. The goal is to become aware enough that feelings can move through without becoming chains. One of the reasons people argue with their existence is because they carry a picture of who they think they should be. This picture may come from family, society, religion, culture, social media, past rejection, or old dreams. The picture says, by now you should be this kind of person. More successful, more stable, more admired, more healed, more married, more rich, more spiritual, more confident, more disciplined, more wanted. Then reality appears, and it does not match the picture. Instead of questioning the picture, people attack themselves. But what if the picture is the problem? What if the image you keep comparing yourself to was never a wise guide, but a burden? What if your suffering is not only because of where you are, but because you keep placing reality beside an imagined version of life and calling reality wrong? Buddhism asks you to release attachment to fixed images, not because dreams are bad, but because clinging to an image can blind you to the truth of the present. You can have direction without hating where you stand. You can hold intention without rejecting what is here. This is a delicate balance. You are allowed to want change. You are allowed to want healing, love, stability, peace, success, health, and better conditions. Acceptance does not erase desire. It purifies your relationship with desire. Instead of desire saying, I cannot be okay until this happens, desire becomes, this matters to me, and I will move toward it with awareness. One creates bondage, the other creates wise effort. When you are arguing with your existence, even good things become tense. Rest feels like laziness. Growth feels like pressure. Relationships feel like tests. Work feels like proof. Spiritual practice feels like another standard to fail. But when you begin accepting yourself as you are, these same things become gentler. Rest becomes care. Growth becomes unfolding. Relationships become places of honesty. Work becomes contribution. Spiritual practice becomes a return, not a performance. The difference is not always in what you do, it is in the inner atmosphere from which you do it. Two people can meditate. One is trying to become worthy, the other is learning to be present. Two people can exercise. One is punishing the body, the other is caring for it. Two people can study. One is running from shame, the other is honoring curiosity. Two people can help others. One is trying to earn love, the other is expressing compassion. Acceptance changes the inner climate of action, and this inner climate matters because you live inside it all day. You may think your life is mainly shaped by big events, but much of your suffering comes from the tone of your own inner world. Is your mind a place of constant attack, or can it become a place of honest companionship? Is your inner voice a whip, or can it become a lamp? Does your heart feel watched by an enemy, or held by awareness? These questions matter because wherever you go, you bring your inner atmosphere with you. Learning to stop arguing with your existence begins in small moments. You notice yourself saying, "I should not feel this." Then you pause and say, "But I do feel this." Not with drama, not with surrender, just truth. You notice yourself saying, "I should be father." Then you pause and say, "But I am here." You notice yourself saying, "I should be different." Then you pause and say, "This is what is present now." These simple acknowledgements end the first layer of war. After acknowledgement comes kindness, not fake sweetness, not forced positivity. Kindness means you respond to what is here in a way that reduces suffering. If fear is here, you breathe and create safety. If sadness is here, you allow tenderness. If guilt is here, you look for repair. If confusion is here, you slow down. If anger is here, you listen for the boundary beneath it. If tiredness is here, you rest where possible. If craving is here, you observe it without letting it drive. This is acceptance in action. It meets reality and asks, "What is wise now?" Many people skip acknowledgement and rush to fixing. They feel pain and immediately search for a solution. Sometimes solutions are needed, but when fixing comes too fast, it can become another way of saying, "This part of me is unacceptable." The wounded heart does not only need solutions, it needs presence. It needs to know it will not be thrown away every time it becomes inconvenient. A crying child does not calm down because you shout instructions from across the room. The child calms when someone comes close with steadiness. Your inner life is not so different. This is why the phrase, "allow yourself to be here," is so powerful. It does not mean you love everything about the moment. It means you stop denying that the moment is happening. You stop exiling the part of you that is present. You let the anxious self be here without calling it pathetic. You let the grieving self be here without calling it dramatic. You let the tired self be here without calling it lazy. You let the uncertain self be here without calling it weak. You let the unfinished self be here without calling it unworthy. The more you allow these parts to exist, the less extreme they become. What is rejected often grows louder. What is allowed with awareness often begins to soften. Anxiety becomes more workable when it is not attacked. Sadness becomes cleaner when it is not shamed. Tiredness becomes informative when it is not denied. Insecurity becomes a message when it is not turned into identity. This is not magic. It is the natural result of reducing inner resistance. There is a Buddhist practice of saying yes to the present moment, not because the present is always pleasant, but because it is already here. This yes is not approval of injustice. It is not permission for harm. It is not silence in the face of abuse. It is an inner yes to reality as the starting point. Yes, this pain is here. Yes, this fear is here. Yes, this is the condition I must respond to. Without that yes, the mind stays lost in "this should not be happening." And while the mind argues, wisdom cannot act clearly. Acceptance gives you energy back. Think of how much strength is wasted in wishing the past were different, wishing your emotions would vanish, wishing your body were someone else's body, wishing your life had another timeline, wishing your personality came without sensitivity, wishing your needs were smaller. This constant resistance drains the heart. When you stop arguing, some of that energy returns. You can use it to heal, to choose, to create, to rest, to speak, to build, to forgive, to begin again. There is also peace in admitting that you do not have to understand everything before you allow yourself to exist. Some people withhold self-acceptance until they have solved every inner mystery. Why am I like this? Where did this begin? What does this mean? How do I fix it? These questions can be useful, but they can also become another maze. Sometimes, before the answer comes, you need to place a hand on your heart and say, even without understanding everything, I can be kind to myself in this moment. You do not need a perfect explanation to deserve gentleness. You do not need to trace every wound to its origin before you stop attacking yourself. You do not need to justify your pain in a way others accept before your pain becomes worthy of care. You can start with the simple truth: suffering is here. In Buddhism, suffering is not treated as shameful. It is treated as something to understand. The first noble truth is not an insult. It is recognition. Life contains suffering. This recognition is not pessimism, it is honesty, and honesty is the first doorway to freedom. When you stop arguing with your existence, you stop making suffering more personal than it needs to be. Instead of saying, "Why me?" every time pain arises, you begin to say, "This is suffering. Many beings know this. Let me meet it with awareness." This does not erase your personal story, but it places it inside a wider human truth. You are not uniquely broken because you struggle. You are participating in the shared vulnerability of life. Everyone who loves can grieve. Everyone who hopes can be disappointed. Everyone who lives in a body will face change. Everyone with a mind will meet fear, desire, memory, and uncertainty. This wider view reduces shame. Shame isolates. It says, "Only you are like this." Awareness connects. It says, "This too belongs to the human path." When you see your pain this way, you become less harsh. You can care for yourself as one suffering being among many suffering beings, not as a failed exception. This is the beginning of compassion, but compassion does not mean you let yourself remain trapped in harmful patterns. It means you approach change from care. If you are in a destructive habit, compassion may mean seeking help. If you are in a harmful relationship, compassion may mean creating distance. If your thoughts are spiraling, compassion may mean grounding yourself. If you are avoiding responsibility, compassion may mean telling the truth and taking action. Acceptance is not passivity. It is the end of denial, which makes wise action more possible. The inner battle often continues because part of you believes you must reject yourself before life rejects you. This is a protective habit. If you criticize yourself first, maybe criticism from others will hurt less. If you expect failure, maybe disappointment will feel less shocking. If you call yourself unworthy, maybe rejection will feel familiar instead of surprising. But this kind of protection is expensive. It asks you to wound yourself daily in order to avoid being wounded by others. That is not safety. That is suffering practiced in advance. Buddhist awareness asks you to notice this and gently stop rehearsing pain. You do not have to reject yourself before anyone else can. You do not have to prepare for every possible abandonment by abandoning yourself first. You do not have to make yourself small so the world cannot shrink you. There is another way. You can stand in your life with humility and say, "I may be hurt sometimes, I may be misunderstood sometimes, I may fail sometimes, but I will not turn against my own existence as preparation." This is real bravery, not the bravery that pretends pain will never happen. The bravery that says, even if pain comes, I will meet it without self-betrayal. When you live this way, you become steadier. You are not fearless, but you are less divided. You are not perfect, but you are more present. You are not always calm, but you are less cruel to yourself when storms arise. To practice this daily, start noticing the words should and should not in your mind. Some shoulds are useful. I should keep my word. I should be honest. I should avoid harming others. But many shoulds are weapons. I should never be sad. I should not need help. I should be successful already. I should always be calm. I should be over my past. When these thoughts arise, examine them. Are they guiding you toward wisdom, or are they attacking your humanity? If they are attacking, soften them into truth. I feel sad today, and I can care for myself. I need help, and needing help does not make me weak. My life is unfolding, and I can take the next step. I am not over everything, but I am learning. This is how language becomes medicine. You cannot always change your whole life in one day, but you can change the way you speak to the life that is here. And the way you speak to yourself shapes the way you feel inside yourself. A harsh mind makes even a good life feel unsafe. A kind and honest mind can bring peace even in difficult seasons. There will be moments when acceptance feels impossible, when pain is too fresh, when disappointment is too heavy, when shame is too loud. In those moments, do not force yourself to feel peaceful. Start smaller. Accept that you cannot accept yet. Say, resistance is here. That too is awareness. You do not have to perform acceptance. You only have to notice honestly. Sometimes the first step is not peace. Sometimes the first step is admitting, I am fighting this. Once you see the fight, you are no longer completely lost inside it. Buddhist practice is patient because it understands that the mind has been trained for years. If you have spent a long time arguing with your existence, you will not stop in one breath. But one breath can begin the change. One pause can weaken the habit. One moment of not attacking yourself can become a seed, then another, then another. Over time, the inner atmosphere shifts. The courtroom becomes a meditation hall. The battlefield becomes a garden. The enemy becomes a wounded being you are learning to care for. This is the sacred turning point. When you stop asking, how do I get rid of myself? And begin asking, how do I care for the self that is here? The first question comes from rejection. The second comes from compassion. The first creates endless striving. The second creates wise growth. The first makes peace always far away. The second allows peace to begin now, even in a small way. You are allowed to be here before you are fully healed. You are allowed to breathe before you have all the answers. You are allowed to rest before you have earned universal approval. You are allowed to belong to this moment before your life looks impressive. You are allowed to feel what you feel without turning it into a crime. You are allowed to be a human being in process, not a project under attack. This does not mean everyone will accept you. It means you stop making your existence depend on their acceptance. It does not mean life will always feel gentle. It means you stop adding inner cruelty to outer difficulty. It does not mean you will never want to change. It means change no longer has to be fueled by disgust. This is the peace that begins when the argument ends. And maybe tonight, the most healing thing you can do is not to become a better version of yourself immediately. Maybe it is to stop rejecting the version of yourself that is listening right now, the one with questions, the one with wounds, the one with hopes, the one with regrets, the one who is tired of fighting. Let that self be here. Let the breath be here. Let the unfinishedness be here. Let the path begin from here, because here is the only place where life can touch you. Not the imagined future self, not the corrected self, not the admired self, not the self who finally has everything together. this self, this breath, this moment. This is where acceptance starts. And when acceptance starts, the heart stops wasting all its strength on war and begins to use that strength for healing. And as this inner war softens, another pattern becomes visible. Because when a person has spent years doubting their right to simply exist, they often try to earn their place through usefulness. They become available, helpful, generous, self-sacrificing, and endlessly giving. Not always because love is flowing freely, but because deep down they fear that if they stop giving, they may stop being valued. And that is where the next lesson begins, with the wound behind overgiving. And maybe this is the truth your heart needed tonight. You were never broken, you were only wounded. The part of you that thinks it is not enough was shaped by old rejection, old comparison, old silence, old shame, and the long habit of trying to earn love by becoming better, stronger, quieter, more useful, or more acceptable. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us that a thought is not always truth, a memory is not always reality, and your worth is not something the world gives you after you finally become perfect. You do not have to keep begging for approval. You do not have to keep performing strength. You do not have to compare your path to another person's karma. You do not have to overgive until there is nothing left of you. You do not have to become someone else just to be chosen. Healing begins when you stop fighting your own existence and return to yourself with awareness, patience, and compassion. So tonight, let the old voice soften. Let the part of you that has been tired of proving finally rest. You are allowed to grow without hating who you are now. You are allowed to be unfinished and still worthy of peace. You are allowed to be human and still belong to life. If this message touched something deep in you, write in the comments, "I am returning to myself." Let that be your quiet reminder that you are no longer abandoning the part of you that needs love the most. And if you want more peaceful Buddhist lessons that help you heal your mind, strengthen your heart, and live with deeper self-worth, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. I will see you in the next lesson.